Hi everyone, I'm new to this and would appreciate any feedback you have. Thank you to all my new supporters. Now to the story. Our story unfolds in a hospital room. A man lies asleep in the bed, but he's abruptly awakened by a delicate petal drifting onto his face. Startled, he bolts upright and anxiously asks where he is. As he frantically checks under the covers and discovers that his legs are missing, a wave of despair overtakes him. He curses and demands to know the year. Suddenly, a comforting voice breaks through his distress. It's his little sister, her eyes brimming with tears yet filled with joy at his awakening. She envelops him in a heartfelt hug, assuring him that she will track down the person responsible for the hit-and-run accident, and that his legs will be healed. It dawns on him that he has somehow gone back a year in time. He remembers the memories of his previous life. The accident that transformed him from the youngest billionaire and chairman of Rising Sun International Group into a cripple. As he concentrated on his treatment, his most trusted brother, Tianzai, betrayed him. Tianzai took control of the Sun Group and used the enormous cost of his medical care to coerce his sister into marrying him. Cheng, the main protagonist, could only watch in anguish, powerless to intervene. As his sister reached out to him for help, Cheng had already lost everything to Tianzai. Later, a game called Divine Path was released. It was a collaborative effort from multiple countries and promised complete realism. One of its standout features was that in-game currency could be exchanged for real money, which caused a huge buzz when it launched. The game's unique selling point was that its character attributes could directly influence real-life skills and create opportunities. This seemed like the perfect chance for him to change his destiny. But at the time, he was broke, without the funds to buy top-tier items. He was stuck with only average gear and unable to compete with players like Tianzai. Tianzai invested his once large fortune into acquiring the finest attributes and resources he could find. As a result, his new powers from the game began to seep into reality, making him a significant figure in the real world. Cheng, consumed by envy, cursed his fate, believing it should have been him enjoying such power. Desperate and with nothing left to lose, Cheng devised a plan to kill both Tianzai and himself. Tianzai warned him that such an act would be pointless, but Cheng, with lifeless eyes, insisted they go through with it. A massive explosion followed. When the dust settled, Cheng lay badly injured, while to his shock, Tianzai was unharmed. Tianzai then delivered one final revelation, telling Cheng that it was he who had caused the death of his parents and the loss of his legs. With a mocking grin, Tianzai added that the last of the Cheng bloodline would now bear his surname. As Cheng's strength dwindled, he managed to utter a final curse, vowing that Tianzai would not escape retribution. We return to the present, where Cheng is disoriented but resolute. Determined not to squander this opportunity, he reassures his sister that he is fine. Inwardly, he vows to protect her and make use of the inheritance left by their parents. His promise is clear. He will tear Tianzai to shreds. Faced with his own disability and the daunting task ahead, Cheng starts to consider his options. A sudden thought strikes him. He remembers the game. With its recent launch, he realizes he has a crucial window before the game's effects begin to seep into the real world, which will take about a month. Cheng decides to use this time wisely. He plans to enhance his strength and skills before his financial resources are potentially frozen. Understanding the urgency of the situation, he resolves to act swiftly and make the most of the opportunity. The sister, seeing Cheng's intense focus, rushes to find a doctor. Cheng, however, calls her back urgently. "I need you to get something for me," he says firmly. "What is it?" she asks, puzzled. "I need a game pod for the Divine Path," Cheng replies. Confused, she asks, "A game pod?" Tianzai, who has just arrived, chimes in with a sneer. "When did you start playing games?" "Oh, Tianzai, you're here," Cheng says, his tone neutral. Tianzai smirks and asks, "What would happen to the company if you got addicted to gaming?" Cheng, recognizing the test, retorts, "I'm just a cripple now. What else can I do but play games?" Tianzai struggles to conceal his malicious grin as he informs Cheng, "The Divine Path was released today, but it's limited to only 100 units. You'll need to pay an extra fee to secure one, about 300 million. Cheng cuts him off. "The company is still under control, right? No matter if it's 30 billion, I will still get that pod." His sister tries to intervene, but Tianzai assures her, "I'll arrange for the pod to be sent to you. Don't worry." With greed flickering in his eyes, Tianzai adds, "You're making it too easy for me to take the company from you." Alright, brother Ching, I'll have it delivered soon. He reaches out to touch Tong but is stopped. Ching firmly grabs Tong's hand and says, she will stay here tonight. I want to spend more time with her. You will never touch my sister. Tiansai, smirking, agrees and leaves. Outside the room, he mutters angrily, how did Ching survive that accident, useless fool. Damn it, I'll just use a bigger truck next time. Back inside, Ching turns to Tong. Transfer all the money into the game. Tong looks bewildered. Why? Don't ask. Also, sell the company stocks. Ching orders. Brother, are you okay? It seems like something's wrong. No, I'm not sick. I just need to bet big, Ching insists, his determination clear. A few hours later, the game pod arrived, and Ching was stunned to see it cost 500 million. With a determined grin, he activated Divine Path. Let's go. The system chimed, system active. As Ching settled into the game, he marveled at how real it felt. Finally, I can move again. This feels so authentic. Please pick your character name, the system prompted. Ching selected Cheju Wang. The system continued, please choose your class. He scanned the options, Summoner, Knight, Priest, Assassin, Ranger, Mage, and Warrior. I'll go with what I'm familiar with, he decided. System notice, Ranger has been selected. Congratulations, sweet, everything's just as I remembered, Ching said with satisfaction. Now, onto the next part. The system notified him, VIP pod detected. Activating special reward, Elf Bloodline. A window displayed his new bloodline stats. He also received a special skill book weakness detection. It's the same as before. I mastered this skill in my last life, he mused. In addition, Ching was awarded a special chest as one of the first VIP users. Shocked, he exclaimed, this wasn't here last time. This must contain something valuable. A screen popped up, indicating that opening the chest would cost 50 million and that it contained a rare talent. 50 million, huh? Let's buy it. If I don't spend it now, that bastard will take it anyway, Ching thought, quickly purchasing in-game currency, recalling that talents were randomized for each new player and that starting early gave better chances. Ching remembered getting a bleeding effect in his previous life, which had been highly beneficial. The system announced, 500 million has been transferred into in-game gold. This is my biggest investment, so I need to get something exceptional. Ching declared, opening the chest as a brilliant golden light burst forth. Are you serious? This can't be happening, he exclaimed in disbelief. Talent obtained. Evolve everything. The system announced, I had no idea such a talent existed. Ching marveled, astounded by his luck. Ching stared at the screen in disbelief, trying to grasp what had just happened. He knew the skill he had just acquired was exceptionally rare. He opened the stats to examine them more closely. 1. Passive Evolution. Grants a 100% chance to upgrade any dropped item by 1 rank, with a 5% chance to trigger Intermediate Evolution, further upgrading the item's rank. Note: Evolution can surpass the highest current item rank. 2. Autonomous Evolution. Guarantees a 100% chance to upgrade any item, tool, skill, or gem by 2 levels, with a 10% chance to upgrade by 3 levels. Cooldown: 24 hours. Note: this effect does not stack with the passive effect, and the same effect can only evolve once. His initial shock gave way to a powerful smile as he activated the skill. Ching praised this newfound godly ability, realizing that while others were still finding bronze and silver items, he would be obtaining at least silver, gold, or even higher tier loot. The 500 million he had spent was clearly worth it. With this skill, he knew he could dominate everyone in his path. Excited to test the power of his new skill with the enhanced dropped items, Ching planned to enter the game soon and casually defeat some monsters. However, he suddenly remembered the 24-hour cooldown for the skill. Recognizing the importance of the first evolution, he decided to find an item with high potential to evolve and quickly unequipped his current gear. With everything in place, he approached the entrance gate. This was his chance to change his fate, and he couldn't contain his excitement as he stepped through, eager to see the fruits of his new power. The sun blazed brightly as Ching stepped into the beginner village, his initial confusion fading as he realized he wasn't the only wealthy player starting the game. He observed two players desperately chasing a chicken, their shouts echoing as they pleaded for the experience points not to escape. Nearby, another pair of players, visibly frustrated, glared at him and each other, lamenting that chickens were their primary source of experience. With greed glinting in their eyes, they dashed off in pursuit. Ching frowned, thinking it was a waste of time to hunt chickens. He knew he couldn't afford to linger here. The bustling crowd around him buzzed with excitement as the chickens dropped meat, but Ching was focused. He had a more important goal in mind. Determined not to waste a second, he resolved to move on and set his sights on defeating the newbie zone boss for the first kill reward. With a determined stride, he walked away, leaving the chaotic scene behind, eager to make his mark. As Ching ventured deeper into the forest, the system alerted him that he was entering a monster zone and advised caution. He dismissed the notification with a flick, confident in his ability to handle the monsters but determined to level up quickly. Securing the first kill on the boss meant extra rewards, and he wasn't about to let anyone else claim it. Understanding the importance of preparation, he opened his inventory. His expression turned to one of disdain as he examined the newbie bio and cloth armor, noting that neither had an evolution option. He wondered if this limitation applied to other items as well. Since his skill could only be used once every 24 hours, he needed to make sure it wasn't wasted, but he questioned whether he could even find an item worth evolving. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He summoned his item and placed his hand on his chest, activating his skill. A purple aura enveloped him, and an elegant crown and armor materialized, transforming his elf bloodline. The system confirmed that the evolution was successful, turning his bloodline into that of the Elf King. He examined the upgraded stats. 1. Strength Empowerment, plus 50% to hit rate. Evasion, attack speed, and critical strike, plus 100% to movement speed. 2. Life Force, health increased by 1000 points, with an additional 100 points per level up. 3. Life Arrow, every third hit is a critical strike. A satisfied smile spread across his face as he observed the significant boost to his attributes. With these enhancements, he was confident that farming in the newbie area would be a breeze. A loud howl pierced the air, drawing King's attention. We see a level 2 forest wolf engaged in battle with a group of players. One of them declared that the wolf was fast but assured the team that the fight was nearly over, while another player expressed a desire to defeat it to gain experience. Ching watched from behind a tree, noting that these players had wisely formed a group to hunt in the newbie area. He recognized that while the experience and drops here were modest, the increased safety of grouping up was a sensible strategy. However, it was clear that they lacked crucial knowledge about monster behavior. Wolves typically hunted in packs, as if on cue. The mage in the party spotted additional wolves emerging from the bushes and alerted her team that they were surrounded. The wolf pack launched their attack. One player, clearly distressed, shouted that he knew he wouldn't die for real but found the game's realism overwhelming as he was swiftly defeated. The mage, her voice trembling, pleaded for her brother to save her, only to see him fall as well. He calmly told her he'd see her at the spawn point as the entire team was overrun and defeated. Ching smiles as he draws back his long bow and releases the arrow, which hits the wolf squarely in the head. The system announces that the level 2 wolf has been defeated. Ching levels up to level 2, gaining 100 additional life points from his bloodline, 10 magic points, 5 attribute points, and some wolf meat. The meat shows it has regeneration properties for health. Ching realizes that healing items are crucial for solo farming. Just then, 2 wolves see Ching. One roars with anger. He notices the pack of wolves coming at him and thinks he just wanted to test out his new damage on something. He turns around and goes to try a new skill, activating 100% speed increase. Ching moves at an incredible speed as he reaches a cliff and dashes over it. He thinks the Elf King bloodline is amazing as he's able to run faster than the wild wolves, without the need for additional equipment. For an archer, speed is essential and thinks without the divine talent, it would have been harder to get stronger. Ching grins with a smile as the wolves can't catch him. He suddenly notices something and stops, wondering why the wolves are not chasing. Fear can be seen on the wolves' faces as the system notices states he has entered the buffalo zone. Ching understands he has entered a high-level area. The buffaloes are too strong for the wolves as he watches the wolves retreat back. Ching thinks to himself that this area has level 5 monsters. He is cut off from a voice saying, "Hey handsome." He looks back and sees a party of 3. The girl asked if Ching wants to join their team. She states that they are preparing to hunt buffalo monsters, and if Ching wants to join them, calling him handsome. They should be the first to reach this area since the server opened. The mage from her party states that they can't just let a random join. He's only level 2, he would just take their experience and hold them back. Ching doesn't look impressed. He walks away saying he's going to another place to farm. The warrior player states if he's gone crazy. Ching responds that buffaloes are not the best to farm, and he likes being a lone wolf. The warrior explains that the next area has stronger monsters and that their group doesn't dare to go there yet. While the mage asks if Ching knows about the penalties for being killed, with a sly grin, Ching remarks that he's a low-level noob and hasn't been defeated yet, so he's not familiar with the consequences. He then asks if the old man can teach him. The warrior responds with a grimace, explaining that first, Ching will lose his gold and his equipment will suffer damage. With a menacing glint in his eye, the warrior adds that, even though it's just a game, the pain and despair of death is very real. The worst part is that his hard-earned experience points will be halved. Ching, looking somewhat clueless, thanks the warrior for the information and bids him farewell. The girl in the group suggests they should intervene, concerned about the dangers of him being alone. However, the mage, visibly irritated, dismisses the idea, stating that if Ching wants to die, it's his own choice. As they watch Ching walk away, Ching picks up a skull and thinks he is in the right place. He knows that this is the boss of the newbie monster zone. As we see, he is at the entrance of the cave, stating this might be the place he meets his defeat. Ching drops the skull he was holding, and it bounces across the ground. At the sudden noise, an eye opens, swiveling around as Ching watches intently. A massive snake emerges, its eyes glowing red, and it gazes down at him with lethal intent. Ching grins and activates his skill, Weakness Detection. Stats materialize. Boss Giant Snake King, level 10. Weakness identified, back of the neck. He takes a moment to appreciate his Elf King's bloodline, which has boosted his health beyond that of the boss. Summoning his weapon, he feels a surge of confidence. There's no reason to be afraid. With a determined smile, he knocks an arrow and draws it back, ready to face the beast. Sensing the danger, the boss lets out a deafening roar. With its mouth wide open, it lunges at Ching, who deftly dodges the attack, confident that the boss's speed will make it difficult to catch him. Ching counters with an attack, but the damage is minimal, and he realizes that this fight will be a struggle due to his weak damage output. As the boss prepares to strike again, Ching leaps over it, relying on his speed to keep him safe. He fires another shot, planning to outmaneuver the slow-moving beast. However, the boss, not to be underestimated, uses its tail to shield its vulnerable spot while glaring at Ching. Frustrated, Ching curses under his breath and devises a new strategy, drawing on the speed boost from his bloodline. With a determined grin, he taunts the boss, which is faster, my arrows or your tail. He fires multiple arrows in quick succession. One arrow bounces off harmlessly, another does the same, but the last one strikes the weak spot, dealing 58 damage. The boss roars in agony as it reels from the hit. With a wicked grin, Ching taunts the boss, boasting that his arrows are simply too fast for it to block them all. But his confidence wavers as he sees that the boss hasn't lost its resolve. The boss exhales a noxious mist that envelops the cave. Ching realizes with alarm that it's poison. The system notification warns that he'll lose 10 HP per second. He calculates that he has less than 2.5 minutes to defeat the boss. As the boss starts to climb away, seemingly trying to use the poison to finish him off, Ching's frustration boils over. He shouts, declaring that the boss is underestimating him. He draws and releases a charged shot with fierce determination. The arrow streaks through the air with incredible speed, slamming into the boss for 116 damage. The boss, stunned and confused, crashed to the ground. Ching knows that the third arrow was a critical hit. With an intimidating aura, he tells the boss that it must be terrified now. It can't withstand too many of those blows. Sweat of fear trickles down the boss's scales as Ching adds, a critical hit, plus a weak spot critical hit, means double damage. I've got 2 minutes, plenty of time to finish this. The battle drags on, as Ching's HP slowly drains. Clinging to the wall for support, he curses the difficulty of the fight. He dodges repeatedly as the boss launches a relentless barrage of ranged attacks, clearly trying to keep him from countering. Despite the boss's efforts, Ching isn't deterred. He backflips away from an incoming attack, taunting the boss for overestimating its own speed. He charges an arrow with determination and lets it fly, striking the boss for a massive 200 damage. As he watches the damage numbers, he's puzzled by the high amount. He speculates that the boss's belly is softer, even if it's not the designated weak spot. Landing back on the ground, Ching prepares for another shot, but then he notices the boss laughing at him. The boss slams into the side wall, causing it to crack and the ground beneath Ching to collapse. Shocked, he falls into the newly formed pit, glaring up in frustration as he realizes the boss's earlier attacks were a strategic ploy to trap him. His anger is interrupted by the sight of the boss releasing more poison mist. The system alerts him that the poison now drains 20 HP per second, leaving him with 600 HP. Cursing at the escalating poison stacks, Ching recognizes that this setup is a common trap for beginners. Realizing the boss has been playing a long game, he is determined to turn the tables. As he pulls out and consumes the wolf meat, a window appears. It restores 20 HP per second for 20 seconds. Ching uses his skill, noting that he must finish the fight within this window of time. He dashed up the wall, leaping from side to side with a determined smile. The boss continues to breathe out the poison mist, unaware of King's rapid ascent. Ching suddenly appears before it, drawing an arrow with precision. Ching greets the boss with a confident smile. The boss appears to have given up, but just as Ching fires an arrow and strikes it in the head, the boss collapses momentarily before attempting to flee. Ching is taken aback by its attempt to escape. Quickly, he fires another arrow, which hits the boss's weak spot, causing it to crack. The boss, now enraged, roars defiantly. But its fury is short-lived, as it spots Ching drawing his third shot. As the third arrow is released, the boss tries to evade, but it's too late. The arrow strikes the previous one lodged in the weak spot, delivering a crushing blow for 200 damage. The system notification pops up, announcing that the boss's HP has reached 0. Ching lands on the ground, breathing heavily but victorious. The system congratulates him as the first player to kill the boss, marking him with the server's first kill. He's placed on the global leaderboard, and the achievement will be announced 3 times across the server. Do you wish to proceed with the announcement? The system prompts. Ching, feeling that he's been in the shadows long enough, firmly responds, "Yes, let it be known." The announcement echoes across the server. Players react with surprise and curiosity. One player remarks, "The game has just begun." Another blames their teammate for being too slow and missing out on the glory. Meanwhile, another team is in disbelief that someone managed to solo the boss. We shift to the team Ching encountered earlier. They excitedly announce that they finally defeated the monster, and it felt like a true boss fight. The warrior and mage eagerly anticipate the rewards for the first kill. Their minds wander into inappropriate fantasies about how they're experts at winning over girls, imagining how the girl in their group might cater to their needs. Just then, the server announcement flashes on the screen. Both the warrior and mage are stunned, their expressions turning to shock and embarrassment as they realize someone has outdone them. They scream in disbelief, demanding to know who could possibly be stronger than them. We return to Ching, who is basking in the system's congratulations for defeating a high-level boss. His reward includes 1.5 times the usual experience, and he has leveled up from 2 to 7. Ching reflects on the risk he took and decides it was definitely worth it. With 30 unused points, he invests them all into agility. His new stats appear, and he realizes that increased agility enhances both his attack power and evasion, improving his attack speed and movement speed. His current HP surpasses that of a warrior, making him a formidable tank. Ching smiles, pleased with his strong start. He checks the drops and is astounded to see that his passive ability has turned his 10 silver into 10 gold. In disbelief, he marvels at how getting 10 gold so early feels like having a cheat code. Meanwhile, a nearby party, who only received copper coins, laments their poor fortune, feeling their effort was a waste of time. Ching notices that his item is beginning to glow, and he wonders what's happening. Could it be a second evolution? His face lights up with excitement as he eagerly anticipates the new rewards and enhancements that might be coming his way. A blinding burst of golden light erupts from the crystal, drawing King's gaze like a magnet. The system's voice crackles with excitement, declaring that he has uncovered a crystal coin. It's an artifact once believed to be extinct and outrageously rare. This coveted coin will unlock exclusive, enigmatic items from NPCs. This will dramatically enhance his factor ability. Ching lifts the coin, its dazzling glow casting intricate patterns as he looks at it. Despite only hearing whispers of such a treasure in his past life, he has never encountered one firsthand. Grasping its immense value, he he realizes this coin will be a game changer in the days ahead. As Ching finished collecting the remaining loot, he eagerly looks into his inventory to see what he's acquired. His first find, a silver-level silver snake, doesn't impress him much. He scowls at its stats, begrudgingly acknowledging it might be worth a little money but clearly disappointed. He quickly moves on to the next item, his heart racing with anticipation. Suddenly, his eyes widen in excitement as he unveils Azure Scale Armor, also silver level. The stats are fairly average, but what grabs his attention is the special effect, a scale shield that offers a 300-point shield at the start of battle, with a 300-second cooldown. Ching remembers that typical Azure gear only comes with bonus attributes and lacks such a unique feature. Thrilled by this rare find, his joy is short-lived when he discovers the armor requires level 10 to equip. He grumbles, feeling that getting a level 10 item and not being able to use it is like defeating a boss and getting nothing in return. Just as Ching is about to give up, thinking all his efforts might have been for nothing, he remembers the silver chest he earned from the reputation system. With a surge of hope, he clicks on the chest, and it soars into the air, glowing brightly. As it opens, King's tension is visible, sweat dripping from his forehead as he prays it doesn't contain items for another class. The chest reveals an impressive sight, an archer firing arrows at lightning speed. The system window flashes, announcing a legendary skill called 7-star chain arrows. Another window pops up with the details. The skill costs 50 mana, shoots 7 arrows in quick succession at one target, each dealing true damage equal to the target's full health. It has a 60-second cooldown, but requires level 10 to use. King's heart races with exhilaration as he discovers the skill, a godly boon meant exclusively for archers. Just as he's about to revel in his good fortune, his joy is abruptly crushed by the realization. The skill requires a level 10. His excitement drains away, replaced by a deep frown. But as he clenches his fist, a new fire ignites within him. He imagines the incredible power he'll wield with his newfound armor and skill, fueling his resolve to reach level 10 as quickly as possible. King's thoughts are suddenly shattered by a desperate voice echoing from the dark recesses of the cave. Is anyone there? Please, help me. The urgency in the voice pricks his curiosity and suspicion. Is it a trap? With careful steps, he approaches the source, his hand brushing against the cold entrance as he peers inside. To his astonishment, he finds a stunning young woman in a revealing dress, huddled against the cave wall. Her face, streaked with tears and trembling with fear, implores him for help. She reveals she's been hiding from a menacing giant snake. Just then, the system chimes in, identifying her as the NPC Lady Gu. Just as Ching is about to turn back to his quest to get to level 10, a flicker of memory catches his attention, a rumor about an NPC known for offering hidden quests. A jolt of realization hits him. Lady Gu is that very NPC. With a composed voice, he informs her that he has dealt with the giant snake and she can now leave the cave. However, Lady Gu extends her slender left leg, wincing in pain. I can't, she admits, my foot is injured. King's eyes widen in shock as he processes her condition. Blushing deeply, Lady Gu places a finger on her lips and tentatively asks if he could carry her out. She reveals her leg, marked with painful red bruises. King's face turns crimson as he carefully lifts her into his arms. As the sunlight bathes them in warmth outside the cave, Lady Gu turns to Ching with a grateful smile. Thank you for saving me, she says, her cheeks flushed with relief. She softly touches his face, her gaze earnest. I might have died in there if it weren't for you. I promise to repay you the next time we meet. King's face flushes with a mix of embarrassment and intrigue, but his mood shifts abruptly. Next time, he asks, his voice edged with confusion. With a tinge of disappointment, he lets go of her. Lady Gu, rubbing her bottom from the unexpected drop, looks up at him with a teasing smile. I don't have much to offer except my body, she says, licking her lips suggestively. So, are you interested? As sunlight streams over them, King's face hardens into a menacing scowl. Stop, he commands, his voice cold and unyielding. I'm not interested. Lady Gu's initial fear quickly fades, replaced by a mischievous grin. Impressive, she laughs, winking at him. You saw right through me. With a playful flick, she blushes as she pulls an item from between her breasts and extends it toward him. Take this, she says. The system reveals it as the Black Moon Blade, a bronze-level weapon for assassins. King's expression darkens, and he smacks the item away, leaving Lady Gu stunned and bewildered. He leans in closer, his eyes glinting with a dangerous intent. I want the hidden class, he demands, voice sharp with expectation. Lady Gu, maintaining a facade of calm, asks innocently, what hidden class? I don't know what you're talking about. A dark, menacing shadow creeps over a little girl as King's eyes narrow with malicious intent. You've left me no choice, he hisses. This is your daughter. He makes a chilling promise. I'll find the little girl with the surname Gu who lives nearby. A shadowy figure with glowing red eyes envelops Lady Gu, and she screams in terror. How do you know all this? She demands, her voice quaking. Seeing no escape, Lady Gu's resistance crumbles. Her face, once defiant, now shows resignation. All right, I'll help you unlock the hidden class, she concedes, rising and placing her hands on her knees in surrender. Cheng, his arms crossed and frustration evident, retorts sharply, you should have done that from the start. Lady Gu begins her spell with an air of dramatic elegance, her wrists coming together as she moves with captivating grace. Cheng, growing impatient, watches intently, urging her to hurry. With a fluid spin and a lift of her hands, she showcases her divine figure while summoning a shimmering spell circle. In an instant, Cheng is caught off guard as the spell erupts into a thunderous whirlwind around him, leaving him trapped within its mesmerizing, crackling energy. The spell glowed brightly as it neared completion. Cheng watched in amazement and said, "It's not bad." Lady Gu, with a dark expression, warned him not to thank her so fast. Cheng, looking confused, wondered what she meant by her warning. His attention was caught by a notification from the system, pulling his eyes to the screen. He looked at the information with fear, his expression showing increasing worry. The system stated the difficulty level was hard and that if he failed, it would result in permanent disqualification. He screamed, claiming it was a mistake. As a level 7, he shouldn't be facing such dangers. His legs felt frozen. With a cold, angry glare, she declared that it was unacceptable for him to use her daughter, and this would be his end. The system indicated that she disliked him, showing a rating of 0. With shock and sweat on his face, he realized he needed to improve his rating with her to access the newbie portal. With the portal already open, he knew there was no turning back. She stated that if he wanted to pass, it would come down to his own skills. He gritted his teeth and said firmly that she was underestimating him. He glared at her, screaming that as soon as he got out, the first thing he was going to do was to find her daughter. She watched helplessly as he laughed, while the portal closed behind him. On a moonlit night, with a few clouds drifting by, a portal suddenly appeared in the sky. He bursts out of the portal and crashed onto the ground, causing sand to scatter everywhere. He coughs from the sand and looks around, confused, wondering where he is. Suddenly, a system window appears, and he looks at it, confused. The message reads that his Shadow Hunter quest has officially begun. Drawing his weapon, he understands that he has to either succeed or die. His thoughts are interrupted by a sudden sound, drawing his eyes toward it. A spike suddenly erupts from the ground, and he wonders what it could be. Suddenly, larger spikes appear, surrounding him, and he is taken by surprise. He curses under his breath as he leaps into the air, trying to avoid the spikes closing in around him. While airborne, he glances down to see what caused the spikes to appear. A large monster emerges from the ground, and he wonders if this is his trial. He activates his weakness finder, scanning the monster for its vulnerabilities. As the monster charges toward him, the skill displays its stats, revealing the creature's details. It's a sandworm, classified as an elite level 5 creature. Its weakness is the center of its mouth. He knows the sandworm isn't high level but has tough skin. He begins to charge his arrow. He fires his arrow, thinking, "Take this, you monster." The arrow strikes the weak spot for 130 damage. The worm lets out a scream of pain. He realizes that the worm becomes clumsy when it's out of the ground. If he can hit its mouth consistently, he's confident he can defeat it. He watches as the worm propels itself into the air. It roars in anger, its mouth wide open as it lunges in for an attack. He calls it a fool for charging straight at him. He dodges the attack as the worm slams into the ground with a heavy crash. He is surprised by the force of the impact and realizes he can't afford to get hit by one of those attacks. He looks at the massive hole, wondering if the worm really just dived away. He notices movement to his left and then catches sight of more movement to his right, realizing the worm might be circling him. He thinks about how difficult this is going to be, realizing that tracking the worm underground is a major challenge. He knows the worm is faster underground and that he has less than a second to react. He understands he can't dodge every attack. He searches for a solid place to stand, hoping to find a nearby rock. He smiles with relief when he spots a bunch of rocks nearby. He spots a large tower and thinks, "This is my chance." With renewed confidence, he dashes toward the tower, believing it's the perfect place to stand. The tower is now within reach. He gets excited as he draws nearer to the tower. He notices the worm's teeth emerging from the sand, revealing its position. He looks in fear, thinking, "Why now, when I'm so close?" He curses, thinking it wants a fair fight, as he dodges the attack and the worm roars into the air. He fires 2 arrows, adding, "I'll give the worm a few extra hits for good measure." One arrow lands, dealing 130 damage, while the other delivers a critical hit for 260 damage. The worm is visibly hurt. He thinks it should be an easy fight as long as he avoids getting ambushed from below. Suddenly, the worm uses a skill called Sand Spit and launches it at him. He exclaims that the worm is trying to attack him while he's midair. He does his best to block the attack, bracing himself against the incoming blast. He fails to block it completely and is hit by some of the attack, taking damage. The system alerts him that his vision is reduced by 50%, his attack accuracy is lowered by 30%, and this effect will last for 10 seconds. Ching scrambles to his feet, cursing at the beast. He tries to brush the sand off his face as a cloud of dust swirls around him. The effects of the attack are visible as he notices his hand is blurry. He realizes that another attack will definitely lead to his defeat. The beast notices the enemy flinching and swiftly takes advantage of the moment. It lunges at Ching from behind, aiming to catch him off guard. Struggling to overcome the blinding effects, he understands that his only chance of survival is to reach the tower as quickly as possible. The beast creates a commotion as it tries to attack. Noticing the noise, he turns to see what's happening. He forces one eye open and sees the beast closing in rapidly. The urgency to dodge is unmistakable on his face. The beast crashes into the ground, aiming to kill him. He narrowly avoids the strike, but the shockwave from the impact sends him hurtling through the air. The force of the shockwave throws him violently against the tower, slamming him into its structure. Struggling to see, he smiles, knowing his plan has worked. He had deliberately aimed to be sent into the tower by the shockwave. He heard more noises and assumed the monster had retreated underground once more. He considered how its tendency to dig down and spew sand made it especially troublesome. He slowly got to his feet, thinking that even though the monster's attack power was formidable, there was an obvious weakness he could exploit. The status effect fades, and he reflects on the damage he dealt and the monster's sneak attacks. He understands that all monsters have predictable attack patterns, and once you decipher them, it's as easy as handling a monkey. With newfound confidence, he smiles, seeing the situation clearly. He prepares for the next round against the monster, drawing an arrow and steadying himself for the battle. With a clear plan in mind, he taunts the monster to reveal itself, standing alert and ready for the next encounter. He watches as the monster's teeth emerge from the sand, slowly exposing its hidden form and signaling its presence. With a wicked grin, he laughs, fully aware that the monster took the bait and that this moment was precisely what he had been waiting for. The trap was set, and now he was ready to strike. As the monster bursts from the ground, he jumps aside and mocks it, commenting on how small-minded and predictable it is. Clearly frustrated by the mockery, the monster unleashed its sand skill once more, sending a swirling torrent of sand toward Ching as it approached. He wasn't afraid of the attack and skillfully avoided it by jumping off the wall. His plan was proceeding as intended, and he began his counterattack by drawing and firing an arrow. The arrow soared with incredible speed, hurtling straight toward the monster. The arrow found its mark in the monster's weak spot, and it let out a roar of pain as the third attack inflicted massive damage. The monster staggered, clearly reeling from the powerful blow. He rolled upon hitting the ground to cushion his fall, while the monster continued to stagger, struggling to regain its balance after the powerful attack. He taunts the monster again, questioning why it has stopped attacking and noting that it only has 2 moves. He comments that it won't be much of a challenge anymore. He glances back with the eyes of a predator stalking its prey, declaring that if that's all the monster has to offer, he will end its life now. He jumps off the ground, charging straight toward the monster's mouth, his expression full of determination and without a trace of fear. The monster unleashes its sand attack once more. He avoids it using the same maneuver and swiftly shoots another arrow. The attack lands precisely on the monster's weak spot once more, causing a significant impact and dealing 130 damage. He fires 2 more arrows, with the first hitting the weak spot and dealing 130 damage. The second arrow, a third shot, lands squarely on the same spot and inflicts a massive 260 damage. He draws one final arrow and remarks that while the battle with the monster has been enjoyable, all good things must come to an end. He declares that this will be the final strike. He shoots the final arrow at the monster, landing the finishing blow. The monster lets out one last roar before falling. The system alerts him that the monster has been defeated, marking a significant victory. As a result, he has leveled up to level 8. His 10 copper coins have been upgraded to 10 silver coins, reflecting his progress. Additionally, he has received a new item, sand boots, bronze quality. These boots come with a special effect of plus 10 movement speed in sandy environments and cannot be upgraded further. He's angry about the item drop and curses at the system, wondering why he received such a disappointing reward after the challenging battle he fought. With a disappointed look, he mocks the dead monster for being so large yet offering so little. Although he acknowledges that the experience gained was decent, he curses at the lifeless creature, feeling frustrated and wishing he could have fought it a bit more. Suddenly, one of the symbols on the tower begins to glow, catching his eye. He watches with growing curiosity, wondering what could be causing this unusual light. He watches the glowing symbol with curiosity, trying to figure out why the light suddenly appeared and what it might mean. Sweat drips down his face as a worried expression settles in. He starts to suspect why this might be happening, realizing that there are 8 identical symbols. He can't shake the feeling that it could be exactly what he fears. Suddenly, 7 additional worm monsters emerge and rush toward him with alarming speed, closing in on him rapidly. He lets out a heavy sigh, fully understanding that his earlier concerns are now becoming a reality. It lets out a furious roar as it advances toward him, while the other monsters do the same, charging forward with menacing intent. They are closing in quickly, readying themselves to strike as they get within range. He understands it's going to be a challenging fight, but given the circumstances, he has no choice but to face the threat head-on. The glowing light reveals the number of monsters he has already defeated and indicates how many more he needs to overcome in order to pass the level. He quickly leaps to the top of the tower, his mind racing as he contemplates how, if this were not merely a trial, this would be an excellent spot to farm levels, but right now, it's definitely not safe for him to stay on the ground. Every step he takes could summon 7 large worms from all directions. He knows that no matter how fast he is, he can't handle that many at once. He realizes the worms are attacking based on ground vibrations. He wonders how to create these vibrations from a safe distance. If he shoots an arrow at the ground, he might attract multiple worms at once, risking his safe spot. He decides he needs to lure them out and defeat them one by one. An idea suddenly comes to him, and his eyes light up with excitement. He eagerly considers the details of his new plan, feeling a surge of enthusiasm as he envisions how it might work. He starts his plan by telling the system to open his inventory. He takes out the silver coins, which are heavier than the copper ones. He throws the silver coins off the tower, carefully calculating that their weight might create the vibrations needed to attract the worms. His intention is to generate just enough disturbance to lure out a single monster, hoping that this will allow him to deal with it one at a time, rather than being overwhelmed by multiple creatures at once. The monster detects the vibrations on the ground and responds immediately, erupting from the earth with a thunderous roar. As it emerges, it reveals its true size, towering over the tower and making it look small in comparison. Ching looks up in awe, taken aback by the sheer magnitude of the creature next to the relatively tiny tower. The monster has taken the bait, and his plan is unfolding as intended. He reflects that it feels a bit extravagant to be fighting under these conditions, as he draws an arrow and carefully takes aim. He releases the arrow, channeling his bloodline ability to enhance its power and strengthen the attack. The boost from his special skill ensures that the shot hits with increased force. To his surprise, The shot, empowered by his bloodline ability, dealt almost no damage. Despite the increased power, the attack seemed to have little effect, which was far below his expectations. With a frustrated look, he realizes that while his position is secure, the angle from which he is attacking makes it nearly impossible to target the monster's weak spot. The creature's high defense is significantly reducing the damage, with each hit inflicting only 35 points of damage. This means his current strategy is far less effective than he hoped. He opens his inventory once more and retrieves additional silver coins, preparing to use them as part of his strategy. With a wicked gleam in his eyes, he smiles with a sense of grim satisfaction. He understands that his strategy might end up being expensive, but he is reassured by the fact that he currently has a substantial amount of money at his disposal. The full moon is shining brightly, surrounded by a sea of twinkling stars. A massive explosion erupts as he battles the Vorms, and by the time the dust settles, 4 hours have passed. He sits atop the tower, gazing up at the sky with a deep sigh, having finally defeated them. A sea of corpses is visible in the sand. His break is interrupted by a system window, and he's confused, thinking he was done. The window shows he's now level 10, with more money and increased health and stamina. He's hit level 10 without realizing it, thanks to the Big Bug's experience boost. With 15 unallocated attribute points, he checks his stats. It shows his stats: HP 2190, magic points 80, attack power 65, agility 39, spirit 5, defense 8, luck 0, and charm 2. He wonders if his low drop rate is due to his luck being at 0. He then allocates all his points to luck. His luck rises to 15, boosting his hit rate to 8 and his dodge to 10. He smiles, realizing that luck affects these two stats. The system announces that his passive evolution has activated. With his improved luck, he feels confident as he charges up his skill. He fires his skill, which speeds through the air with a blue glow surrounding it. The skill strikes the already defeated worm, enveloping the monster in a radiant energy glow as it lies motionless. The skill takes effect, and a massive purple light begins to glow around it before shooting up into the sky. He watches the light and remembers how, in his previous life, lack of money for Krypton gold left his damage and health low. To survive, he had to focus all his attribute points on attack and health, missing out on other benefits. He gazes in wonder, pondering what the light might have done. Excitedly, he leaps off the tower, thinking he might have unlocked legendary items. As he searches through the loot, he hopes the monster dropped something valuable. The system informs him that Sand Escape, legendary, allows movement and concealment in sand at speed 12, cannot cross solid ground, uses no mana, and is only for desert terrain. He feels ripped off upon reading the description, realizing the skill only lets him mimic a sand monster. Stunned and frustrated, he considers its potential and hopes it might still be useful. The system informs him that 10 silver coins were spent to learn Sand Escape. Remembering he's now level 10 and can use skills from the last silver box, he clicks the window and learns 7-star arrows. The system then notifies him that 20 silver coins have been spent. The system informs him that he has learned 7-star arrows. He spots blue scale armor in the loot, which is silver in color, and equips it immediately. He notes the significant improvement and realizes he might be the highest level on the server. The system confirms that his defense has increased to 3 and his health points is now 2,390. His face shows confusion as he sees the name and thinks it's strange. He looks over and sees that all the symbols on the tower are now glowing. He looks over and sees the result of his handiwork, with all of them defeated. He recalls that he had indeed remembered to collect all the loot from them. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake. Caught off guard, he wonders what on earth is happening now. The glowing tower transforms, expanding and opening a new path bathed in blue light. He watches in shock, trying to comprehend the sudden changes and understand what's happening. He begins to investigate what's happening as he walks towards the newly revealed path. He looks down the path, surrounded by a blue glow, and wonders what is happening. He realizes that the real reward is likely down there, since the initial monsters didn't open an exit. The blue glow emanates from the door. He looks at the door with excitement and a smile, knowing this is a great opportunity to try out his new skill and equipment. He feels eager to see how well they perform. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, surprising him and interrupting his thoughts. He looks up, confused, and wonders if he just heard his sister Zitong's voice. The unexpected sound makes him question if he's imagining things. He recognizes that it's indeed her as she climbs up and informs him that it's time to eat. She winks and blushes, saying she made his favorite preserved egg and lean meat porridge just for him. He ignored her comment and, sounding confused, asked when she had climbed onto the game cabin. In a worried tone, he told her to get down quickly and not to hurt herself. Meanwhile, the system informed him that there is a message outside the game saying someone is calling him and asked if he wants to leave the game. He tells the system no, realizing that if he leaves without completing the game, he'll never have another chance to obtain a hidden profession. It will be absolutely impossible to achieve again. He tells her to stop what she's doing, saying he's in the middle of a game and doesn't have time right now. She responds that he's been playing for 8 hours and is still recovering. If he doesn't come out, she'd be angry with him. He yells at her, insisting she listen and not disturb him while he's focused on the game. She looks at him, her face showing disapproval, as she becomes increasingly unhappy with his response. She slams the food onto the side table, her face flushed with anger. Screaming that she doesn't care about him, she storms off. But she is genuinely worried about him, her face showing sadness. She wonders how he could have become like this and how she can cheer him up. He looks up with a sad expression, confused by his actions but aware that he needs to finish. He apologizes to her. With a serious expression, he reflects that she should wait until he becomes stronger and can better protect her. He resolves to improve himself so that he can be worthy of her concern. He looks at the glowing door and declares that he has come for the Phantom Hunter and will be encountering it very soon. The glow of energy becomes increasingly intense as he approaches, growing stronger with each step. He finally reaches the door, covering his face with one hand to shield himself from the intense glow, while he pushes through the radiant energy with the other hand. As he steps in, the intensity of the energy is overwhelming, making it so difficult to see that he can only use one eye to navigate through the blinding brightness. He arrives as the glowing light starts to fade, taking a moment to adjust from the intense brightness of the door. He carefully looks around, trying to make sense of his new surroundings. He observes that he may be underground in a cave, but his concern grows as he notices a red glowing aura emanating from the rock walls. A system window pops up urgently, indicating that the area is extremely dangerous and advising him to proceed with caution. He reads the notification and realizes he might be in a boss room, understanding the danger and importance of the situation. Despite this, he remains outwardly calm. Suddenly, a large mouth emerges from the ground and emits a thunderous roar, glowing bright red with a powerful aura. He looks on in amazement at the dramatic entrance but knows that this will not be easy. As dust from the monster's entrance settles around him, he looks on, questioning how this can possibly be right and struggling to believe what he's witnessing. The boss reveals its face, and two red eyes glow ominously as they fixate on him with an intense, unblinking stare. He can do nothing but stare as he realizes the creature before him is a giant crab, with a red aura glowing ominously around the room. We now see the true scale of the crab, and it becomes clear that he is nothing more than an ant compared to its colossal size. The crab's massive form dwarfs him entirely. A system window appears, showing that the monster before him is the Gold Boss Sand King, with 200 attack, level 15, 80 defense, 6000 HP, and a special ability called Sandstorm. He looks on, recognizing the immense challenge ahead and remarks that the crab's defense and health are outrageously high. Understanding the difficulty of the battle, he activates his skill, Weakness. His skill informs him that there are no weaknesses found. Sweat trickles down his cheek as he processes this information, struggling to make sense of it. Shock and confusion are clear on his face as he grapples with the realization that the monster has no apparent vulnerabilities. The boss took advantage of the situation by launching an attack while Ching was still grappling with the confusing information. But he managed to dodge, noting that, fortunately, being so big meant the boss's speed wasn't impressive. But even though he managed to dodge the attack, he still ended up taking damage. He swore when he realized the damage had come from the shockwave and was furious about how much harm it had caused from such a seemingly minor attack. As he got back to his feet, he thought about how grateful he was for the 300-point shield provided by the armor. If that shockwave had hit his health directly, the pain would have been as severe as being hit by a truck. He was taken aback by the impact of the attack, which left a large hole as the boss pulled his arm away. He looked worried, understanding that the gold-level boss's power meant dodging its foot stomps wouldn't be enough. He fired an arrow to gauge the kind of damage he could inflict. The system's display showed that he had inflicted exactly 1 point of damage. His face was a mix of confusion and frustration as he shouted about only dealing 1 point of damage. He struggled to understand why, when the defense was so much higher than his attack power, it seemed to reduce his damage output to just 1 point. But the monster didn't hesitate. It immediately launched a counterattack. He avoided the attack, realizing that dodging wasn't just a matter of jumping. He needed to use his speed to run, or he would be struck by the shockwave. While he was strategizing, he was caught off guard as the boss launched another attack. He knew he couldn't dodge at such close range, realizing that the distance left him with no time to react. The strike slammed into the ground with immense force, sending a powerful shockwave through the area. Just then, the boss looked confused as it saw a hole from the impact, but Ching was nowhere to be found inside it. At that moment, Ching was visible, gripping the boss's arm with a look of relief on his face, reflecting on how close the encounter had been. Suddenly, the boss began to shake its arm violently as it realized Ching was clinging to it. Unable to hold on, Ching was flung through the air as he screamed. Cursing at the boss, Ching was thrown through the air as the boss roared back, its eyes filled with a deadly fury. He screamed at the boss, asserting that it shouldn't underestimate him, as he prepared to unleash a powerful skill. A bright glow emerged, outlining a figure as he released his 7-star arrow attack. The arrows rained down on the boss, dealing significant damage, far more than before. He landed on the ground with a relieved smile, thinking about how the 7-star linked arrows each dealt 1% of maximum HP as true damage, bypassing armor. As the boss glared down at him in anger, Ching could only think that the most important thing was, the healthier you are, the more it will hurt when you get hit. Being in good shape means the impact will be more painful. The boss, frustrated by the damage taken, started attacking with increased intensity. As Ching did his best to dodge the attacks, he struggled with the shock waves, which he couldn't avoid. His face reflected the urgency of his effort to dodge the attacks. Anger showed on his face, with a vein popping out on his cheek as he looked at the boss, who seemed to be having fun. He grew furious and charged toward the boss, taking damage as he moved closer to achieving his goal. He reached the top of the boss, positioning himself directly above it. With the boss's health still high, he readied himself and unleashed his skill, 7 arrows, but at that moment, nothing happened. The boss looked up, clearly confused about what was going on. The system display revealed his energy bar, indicating that he didn't have enough to use the skill. With a look of embarrassment, he commented that he didn't have enough energy. As the boss began to move, Ching realized that despite the power of 7-star arrows, his mana cap was insufficient for 2 shots. The 2 mana points he had were from auto-recovery. Given his current mental strength, he would recover about 5 points per minute, meaning he would need to wait at least 4 minutes before he could use the skill again. But his thoughts shifted as he noticed he was approaching the ceiling. He wondered if this thing was trying to make him hit it. He leapt off the top of the boss. As the boss slammed into the ceiling, it created a cloud of dust. He landed on the ground and taunted the boss, thinking that if it really wanted him to hit the ceiling, it would need to speed up at least tenfold. He glanced up and saw an open area in the boss's abdomen. At that moment, the system announced that a weakness had been found. He looked confused, trying to understand what was happening. How could there be a weakness now? The skill began to rescan the boss, clearly identifying and highlighting the newly discovered weakness. The system revealed that the abdomen had been marked as the new weakness. He began to smile as he understood. The weakness had been hidden underneath, making it undetectable earlier. He realized that the boss's maneuver was a deliberate attempt to force him into targeting the newly exposed weakness. But suddenly, the weakness area started behaving oddly, beginning to gather and accumulate energy. The system indicated that the Sand King ultimate was active, with a danger warning. Getting caught would result in 100 damage per second, movement restriction, and 60 seconds of blindness. Ching looked down in confusion as he read the information, his anxiety growing with each line. Fear started to sink in as he fully grasped the implications. The boss's body began to glow with red energy as the skill activated, and 2 tornadoes emerged, swirling menacingly. But Ching was still trying to understand the system message as the tornadoes descended toward him. He looked as if he had been betrayed, stunned by the realization that, while high damage was already troubling, the extended duration of the skill was an even greater shock. He did his best to withstand the attack, struggling against the overwhelming wind pressure that rendered his legs immobile. The force was so intense that escape seemed impossible. As the attack closed in, he realized it also had control effects. There was nowhere to hide, and taking the full hit would result in 6,000 damage. The attack began to intensify, with the damage increasing as the glow around it grew stronger. As more tornadoes appeared and surrounded Ching, the damage intensified, growing worse with each passing moment as the storm closed in around him. He struggled to comprehend how a boss could have such a powerful skill, feeling as if it was like using a cheat code. In his frustration and disbelief, he screamed that it was outright cheating. A few minutes later, the tornadoes vanished. The boss wore a puzzled expression, his face reflecting concern as he wondered where Ching had gone. Just then, a bump in the ground began to grow larger. He suddenly emerged from the hole in the ground, a grin on his face as he taunted the boss, asking if he missed him, before shooting another arrow. The arrow struck a weak spot, causing a display of 130 health loss. He commented with a grin, asking if the boss was surprised. Veins popped up on the boss's face, and it charged up for another skill, clearly angry from the taunting. In its fury, the boss called forth another storm of tornadoes, whipping up a chaotic tempest. But he wasn't afraid of the skill. Instead, he taunted the boss again, calling the skill boring, before diving into the sand. The system confirmed the use of the sand escape, and he began to move through the sand with ease. He emerged from the ground and shot more arrows, a satisfied thought crossing his mind as he realized the skill's effectiveness in avoiding some ground damage. One arrow dealt 130 damage, while the third shot hit for 260 damage. The boss's health began to steadily drop. He looked up at the boss, still on the ceiling, as the boss seemed to be formulating a plan. Deciding it was best to be on the ground, the boss crashed back down from the ceiling. As the boss came down to avoid getting hit in the weak spot, he watched with a smirk, clearly enjoying the boss's move. But the boss wasted no time, swiftly launching into a series of attacks as soon as it hit the ground. But he wasn't concerned. With a laugh, he happily dove back into the sand, retreating effortlessly from the boss's onslaught. As he began to toy with the boss, using the sand to his advantage, he popped his head out to taunt the boss further. Each taunt only made the boss angrier, fueling its frustration. As the boss attacked furiously with each strike meant to kill, he hid in the sand, feeling pleased with the skill's lack of mana consumption and cooldown, truly considering it a legendary ability. He began having fun, toying with the boss by shooting arrows wherever he pleased to provoke it, then hiding away only to reappear and do it again. Ching was genuinely enjoying himself, treating the boss like a regular monster rather than a serious boss fight. Each arrow dealt just 1 damage, but he didn't care about the numbers. He was having too much fun. He stopped for a moment, noting with a smile that he had hardly dealt any damage, but the boss certainly looked furious. He grinned, pleased with his antics. But just then, the boss roared in frustration, calling him a jerk as its anger boiled over. He was momentarily confused, trying to process whether the boss had really called him that. Then he remarked with surprise that the boss could actually talk. 3 hours had passed, and Ching was on one knee, looking worn out from the battle. His health bar showed the toll it had taken. He remarked that it was taking a long time to complete. Just then, the system notified him that his skill, 7-star arrows, was ready for use. As he read the information, he thought to himself that it was time to finish this. With his skill ready, he taunted, gearing up for his final strike. The boss, its health bar nearly depleted, simply looked away with a sense of resignation, clearly defeated and unwilling to continue the fight. He watched cautiously, suspecting it might be a trap. It seemed unusual for a boss to simply give up, and he was wary of any potential trick. But it was no trick. The boss began to cry and plead, its body shaking with exhaustion and distress. It was clear that the prolonged battle had taken a severe toll, and it was desperately asking for the ordeal to come to an end. Feeling a bit sad for the boss, he commented that he hadn't wanted a long battle. It was just that the boss's defense was too high and he had dealt minimal damage. As he readied another arrow, he prepared to finish the fight. He bid farewell to the boss as he launched his skill, delivering the final blow as it headed towards the boss. The arrows struck their mark, bringing the prolonged battle to an end as the boss's health reached 0. The system notification appeared, announcing the successful defeat of the Sand King and granting a 1.5 times multiplier for cross-level challenge experience. Ching leveled up 3 times. He smiled, thinking about the increasing difficulty of future level-ups but feeling proud of gaining 13 levels in one day. He was determined to be the first to achieve such a feat. Another notification appeared, indicating that Ching had qualified to change to a hidden class, Phantom Hunter. Options for class change were presented. He was thrilled by the news and immediately chose to make the change, reflecting on the effort he had put into the quest to achieve this reward. The transformation commenced, and his bloodline became visible as both his character and aura were enveloped in a radiant golden light. The shimmering aura marked the shift to his new class, highlighting the significance of the moment. The change began when the golden aura that had once enveloped his bloodline gradually gave way to a dark shadow. The dark shadow continued to spread, gradually overtaking the once golden bloodline. As the shadow grew, it revealed a new, darker form that began to emerge. This shadowy presence slowly covered the entire body, replacing the former light with an all-encompassing gloom that seemed to absorb every trace of brightness. The transformation was complete as the shadow enveloped the figure, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of darkness. Then the system confirmed the transformation, displaying his new stats on the screen. The update highlighted the dramatic shift, reflecting the complete change in his attributes and abilities. Another window soon appeared, offering additional details. It explained that his new Phantom Hunter talent granted him between 5 and 7 attribute points for free allocation each time he leveled up. He was overjoyed as he read the information, realizing that it meant gaining 2 extra attribute points for free with each level up. The sheer power of the upgrade left him astonished. Another window appeared, showing a new skill, Phantom Summon. It summoned a phantom to fight for 30 seconds, using 40% of your attack power and casting skills. Mana cost, 50. Another window appeared, showing a new skill, Death Trap. It created an invisible trap that damaged enemies but had no effect on large ones. Mana cost, 0. He realized that, though the Phantom Hunter's skills seemed average now, they were growth-type abilities that would become extremely powerful. The combination of Death Trap's 100% damage boost and the Phantom's output could result in instant kills, making the class truly exceptional. He then wondered what kinds of effects the Phantom could evolve into, just as the system displayed that active evolution had a 5-hour cooldown remaining. Just then, passive evolution activated. As it activated the passive effect, his character began to glow bright gold, confirming that investing in luck points had been the right move. As luck was the reason it worked, he decided to use the skill on the boss's body, and as he did, a bright light began to grow around it. The system then stated, gold obtained, 32 silver coins, 32 gold coins, 2 crystal gems. Current gold, 43 gold, 20 silver, 8 crystal gems. He looked at the loot and set a small goal, earn 1 billion gold. He wanted to see what other good items had dropped. As the boss's body continued to glow more intensely, additional items began to appear. Seeing the influx of loot, he resolved to store everything that came out. The system then announced the armor-piercing bow, a silver-tier item requiring level 10 and designed for rangers. Featuring plus 50 attack power, plus 10 agility, and a special effect that reduces the opponent's defense by 5 points per hit, stacking up to 5 times. He smiled, noting that the bow was finally a decent weapon, ideal for dealing with high defense monsters, as he equipped it. Another system window displayed steel gauntlets, silver tier, with plus 12 attack power, plus 7 agility, and a special effect that speeds up arrow loading. He didn't waste any time and equipped it, smiling with satisfaction as he admired his new gear. Then another item appeared, golden greatsword, silver tier, requiring warrior profession and level 12. With plus 10 strength and a special effect that releases golden sword energy with each swing, dealing 30% of attack power. His face displayed disappointment as he considered the item, realizing it looked cool but was unusable for him. He thought about selling it but decided he might give it to someone later. Then another item window appeared, Life Amulet, silver tier, with no profession requirement, offering plus 10 defense and restoring 10 HP per second when out of combat. He was satisfied with the item and equipped it as well. He then opened his stats window and allocated all 21 unspent attribute points to agility. A new window popped up showing his updated stats. Level 13, 29,201 HP, 1,801 attack power, 821 agility, 33 defense, 20 luck, and 20 for movement speed. Suddenly, a system notification appeared, indicating that he had played for over 15 hours and would be forcibly logged out soon. He was taken aback, realizing he had to log out soon. He shouted in frustration, wishing he could play longer, and cursed the system. But the system paid no attention to his protests and proceeded with the forced logout process. At this point, he could only see a blue screen with a message appearing that read, "You have been logged off." Back in the real world, he screamed in frustration, reaching out saying he wanted to continue grinding. But he had no say in the matter as he realized he was already logged out of the game. He placed his hands together and questioned how an adult like him ended up with an anti-addiction system. But he then thought to himself that everything had been going pretty smoothly so far. He began to think about the people who had wronged him, reflecting on how well things had been going in the game so far. Anger crossed his face as he vowed that very soon, Xiaotie and everyone who had betrayed him would pay. The scene shifted to his hospital room, where he saw his sister sleeping in his bed. He smiled as he picked up the food she made for him, appreciating how the porridge looked and smelled surprisingly good. He also thought about how Xiaotong had been pampered like a princess since childhood, never having to lift a finger. He looked at her peacefully sleeping and thought about how, in order to take care of his body and mood, she must have endured a lot. As he began to eat, he thought about how once his revenge was complete, he would make sure she lived a good life. But suddenly, his face showed fear as blood started to seep from his nose. The noise woke his sister, who began to stir, as his face contorted in pain from the food that tasted like a block of salt boiled in bitter bile. She rubbed her eyes and smiled in the moonlight, saying he had finally stopped playing games. He did his best to hide his discomfort from the bad food and commented that he didn't mean to wake her. She got up happily, went to him, and asked if he had already eaten the porridge she made and how it tasted. He replied that it was good, fresh, and delicious. She was thrilled to hear that, blushing as she looked into his eyes and urged him to hurry and finish the porridge, insisting he must be starving. He looked at her, unsure of what to say, and began to panic as sweat trickled down his face. She looked at him with a fierce expression, making it clear he had no choice but to eat. His face showed fear as he began eating the food reluctantly. On the outside, he did his best to show her that her food was the best, but on the inside, he was crying, feeling as if he were being tortured. The next day, he woke up still feeling the effects of that terrible food, and his face clearly showed the aftermath. But just then, a voice called out, asking how Mr. Shen was feeling. He looked over at her. She began to flirt with him, sitting down next to him and pressing her body against his. Looking into his eyes, she commented on the problems he had the previous day and asked if he was feeling better. He looked down at her, unaffected by her charm, her true face showing in her mind as she thought about his wealth and looks, despite his disability, and considered that staying with him would ensure a life of luxury. He shielded his eyes from the light and mentioned that he was fine, just tired from playing the game yesterday. She then touched his hand, playfully placed her other hand on the side of her chest with a flirtatious look, and continued to flirt, telling him to let her know if he needed anything. She moved closer and, with a flirtatious tone, said she would do anything for his health. But then Shen, with a dumb look, directed her to push his wheelchair to the game pod so he could play. She looked confused by his request but did as she was told, while she continued to process why her plan had failed. Her face showed anger and embarrassment as she thought about how she might be less important to him than a game. The scene shifts to the pod, where Shen is already set up inside. She walks away, still confused, rubbing the back of her head and wondering if it was because her makeup wasn't good enough today. He gave the command to start the game, connected his consciousness, and began the process of entering the game. As his virtual form took shape, he seamlessly transferred his awareness into his in-game body. The connection was completed, and he began to open his eyes as his game character. The game then teleported him to the city, where he saw many other players going about their day. The system welcomed him back and announced that there were currently 300,000 players online. He walked down the stairs, opened his equipment panel, and thought about how the global player base would soon exceed 100 million. Realizing he needed to level up quickly, he focused on his task. The system displayed the information he requested, and he observed it, noting that he needed to acquire some top-tier gear. He thought about how he would then go fight bosses above level 20 as he entered a building. He opened the door, rubbed the back of his head, and hoped he had found the right place. The owner noticed the new customer entering. What caught his eye was the fact that the customer was wearing silver armor. He put on his best sales pitch and asked Shen what he needed. He couldn't hear the shopkeeper as he scanned the items, noting that, as expected, all of it was bronze tier junk. He thought to himself that the better golden tier equipment must have already been hidden by the shopkeeper. Just then, he recalled what the shopkeeper had said earlier and expressed his interest in the shop's treasure item. The owner looked at him, questioning his desire for the coveted item. The shopkeeper points to the items on display, signaling these are all for sale and offers a discount. They then shrug and wave off the idea of a shop treasure, suggesting it might be too pricey. But then Shen smiles, with a confident look, and flicks a gem toward the shopkeeper, sure that his gem will make an impression. He catches the item, and the system notification shows that favorability has increased by 70. Realizing the value of what he's holding, he begins to sweat and quickly comments that it was his mistake not to recognize such a remarkable person. He wastes no time, snaps his fingers, and announces, "Secret door, unlock." Instantly, a bright light streams from the door, and Shen quickly shields himself from the glare. The shopkeeper comments that these items aren't supposed to be sold for another 30 days, but since Shen is already here, he can take a look. Shen places his hands on his hips and sees an array of glowing items and weapons before him. He looks at one item but is not impressed. As he touches it and remarks that it is just silver trash, the shopkeeper stares at him in shock, taken aback by the comment. But then something catches his eye, an item he hadn't anticipated seeing here. He turns to the shopkeeper, who, sensing a potential sale, beams with excitement. The shopkeeper moves closer and draws attention to a striking mask that looks like a fierce beast. It glows with an intriguing blue and white aura, captivating Shen's interest. The shopkeeper points out that the mask is unique and was originally set to be sold for 200,000 gold coins starting next month. As Shen opens the system window and confirms the price, the shopkeeper then adds that, thanks to the crystal stone Shen provided, he can offer it to him for a discounted price of 150,000 gold coins. Just then, the system notifies him that 200,000 gold coins have been recharged and asks if he would like to use them for the transaction. Shen, with a dumbfounded look on his face, agrees. The shopkeeper continues, commenting that 150,000 gold coins would take an average person a whole year to gather. Just then, the shopkeeper's system announces that 200,000 gold coins have been received. The shopkeeper turns around quickly, his face showing shock, as his jaw drops and his eyes tremble with surprise, his face going pale from the unexpected notification. Shen turns back to collect the mask, leaving the 200,000 gold coins with the shopkeeper and indicating that he doesn't need the discount. He signals for the shopkeeper to notify him first about any valuable items in the future. The shopkeeper, still fixated on the system window showing the payment, responds with a distracted "no problem." He mutters to himself that Shen is now his VIP customer, his face still showing astonishment at the unexpected turn of events. He leaves the store and puts on the mask, reflecting that 200,000 gold coins are equivalent to 2 million in cash. For such a unique piece of headgear, it's definitely not overpriced. Eager to see what the mask can do, he presses a button located on the side. As the mask activates, it begins to glow with a bright, pulsating light, signaling its extraordinary features are now in use. The top half of the mask begins to disappear, and the system comments that the display visor has been removed. Realizing that he can now choose between a full mask or a half mask, he thinks this feature will be quite useful. Satisfied, he continues walking. As he walks, the system shows White Tiger Mask, Gold Grade, plus 15 speed, Tiger-shaped active skill gives plus 15 strength to nearby players. Special effect, terrifies monsters and lower-level players. He smiles at the impressive stats, and other players admire his gear. One player tells his friend how amazing the mask looks, and the friend explains that it's a gold-grade item. As others overhear the conversation, they are astonished and start discussing it among themselves. They express their disbelief, wondering how someone could have a gold-grade item already and suggesting that it must be cheating. They also point out that gold equipment isn't available for purchase in the official shop, even if you had the money, which adds to their suspicion that something shady is going on. Suddenly, a hand grabs his shoulder, making him come to a halt. He turns around to see a larger player with an intimidating presence. The player, along with a group of teammates, demands that Shen slow down. Shen, surprised and a bit wary, asks what they want. The larger player, with a sneer and a menacing tone, comments on how impressive Shen's gear is. He then suggests that Shen should lend them his equipment so they can use it for a while, clearly eyeing the gear with interest. He clicks the mask to reveal his face and responds, "Lend it to the." The group stares at him, with the larger player's eyes showing a hint of killing intent if Shen refuses to hand it over. The other two members of the group seem to understand the situation, but Shen doesn't back down. Instead, he meets their gaze with a dark, unwavering look, a golden spark flickering in his eyes as he asks why he should. The big guy continues to pressure Shen, demanding to know how he obtained such high-level equipment so soon after the server opened. He accuses Shen of using cheats and warns that if Shen doesn't want to get banned, he should hand over his items. Shen closes his eyes and laughs, suggesting that the large player is essentially trying to rob him. As the conversation catches the attention of others nearby, one player notes that Shen, with his gold gear, appears to be in trouble and is being accused of cheating. Another player sees the growing crowd and comments that they should check it out. One member of the large group comments that Shen is likely to lose his items, and if it looks like robbery, so be it. Meanwhile, another member of the group, seeing more players gathering and sensing that the situation could escalate, starts devising a plan. His expression grows darker as he hatches a devious strategy to deal with Shen, aiming to turn the situation to his advantage. He raises his hand and shouts, "Teach the cheating upgrade dog a lesson." Hoping to incite the crowd against Shen, at first, he is skeptical, thinking that the crowd's pressure won't be enough to make Shen give up his gear. However, as the crowd starts chanting loudly for cheaters to be banned and punished, he is taken aback by how swiftly their anger is aroused. His surprise grows as more players join in, their chants growing louder and more insistent, intensifying the pressure on Shen. With the crowd's support, he feels confident he can take Shen's items without facing any trouble. Looking down at Shen with a smirk, he makes his demand. Shen, visibly frustrated, rubs the back of his head. The big guy continues, threatening that they will make sure Shen is sent back to the respawn point and will keep coming after him each time he reappears. Shen, clearly angry with a vein visible on his face, activates his mask and its skill. The effect is evident around his eyes as he reacts to the situation, his expression showing his frustration with those who believe everything they hear and those who cannot stand seeing others succeed. Shen, who despises troublemakers, notices from his skills that the big guy doing all the talking is a warrior level 4. The person who rallied the crowd is an assassin level 5, and the one threatening to take his gear is an archer level 5. He assesses the threat level of the group and prepares himself for battle, his mask amplifying his fierce demeanor. With a confident look, he taunts them through the mask, pointing at each one and daring them to come at him all at once. He remarks that it might make the fight a bit more interesting and that he doesn't want to waste time on trash. They all become enraged by Shen's taunts and prepare to attack. The archer leaps into the air, declaring that with one move, he'll defeat Shen with a single arrow. Meanwhile, the warrior charges at him, taunting Shen for having so many openings in his stance. The assassin sneaks in behind, drawing his weapon and seething with anger at Shen's audacity to speak so arrogantly. Despite the threats and the mounting pressure, Shen remains steadfast and confident. Suddenly, a dark purple aura surrounds Shen, giving him a menacing appearance as he prepares his skill with intense killing intent. Out of this aura, a massive, fearsome tiger materializes, its presence radiating power. Shen remains motionless as the tiger grows larger, roaring with such force that shockwaves emanate from it, slamming into the attacking group. As the shockwaves dissipate, the attackers collapse to the ground, stunned and defeated, while Shen stands unmoved, his gaze unwavering as others watch in awe. Suddenly, the warrior is seen throwing up from the shockwaves' effects, unable to understand what just happened. The crowd looks on in shock, with one person asking what occurred and another noting that Shen hadn't even moved, yet the attackers had all fallen. Shen steps forward to the warrior and calmly returns the earlier threat, saying that if they had planned to keep defeating him every time he respawned, they should rethink that idea now. Shen smiles as he looks down at the warrior and tells him to remember his ID. Morning wine, evening song. He adds that they're welcome to challenge him anytime. The crowd starts to murmur, intrigued by the name. One person mentions that he recognizes the ID from somewhere, while another opens the system window to look up user IDs, asking for a moment to check. The system displays that Morning Wine, Evening Song is ranked number 1 on the leaderboard, a level 13 Phantom Hunter with no guild. As the crowd processes this information, their shock and fear become evident as they realize they are facing the top player in the game. Just then, someone in the crowd shouted that he was number 1 on the leaderboard. Another bystander thought the name sounded familiar. Shen walked away, realizing he had more important things to do. Meanwhile, the warrior on the ground faced the reality of his mistake, knowing he had chosen the wrong person to steal from. Humiliated, he couldn't let this embarrassment slide and cursed at him in anger. The scene shifts as he arrives at a house in the village. A smile spreads across his face. He realizes he needs to stop here before heading back to farm monsters. As he walks down the path, he spots a girl from the cliff, playing with a frog. Excited, he thinks he's finally found her. He approaches her, waving with a friendly smile, and calls her little girl, asking if she knows Madame Gu. She looks back at him, clearly annoyed. Raising an eyebrow, she shoots him a frustrated look, conveying that she doesn't appreciate being called a little girl and thinks he can't be much older than her. Just then, he thinks about Gu and her personality, sighing as he realizes this is the girl he's been looking for. She's still having a tantrum in the background. He bends down to interrupt her fuss and asks if she's Madame Gu's daughter, Gu Linger. She looks at him, confused and wary, clearly wondering how he knows her name and what he wants. He leans in closer, a creepy grin on his face as he comments that her mother promised him she'd marry him in 5 years. Instead of being put off, her expression brightens in shock, and she exclaims that can't be right. In a burst of emotion, she runs off crying, cursing her mom for arranging the marriage. He holds back his laughter as her voice carries through the village. Just then, Gu pops her head out of the door, looking in her direction and asking what's wrong. She runs into her mother's arms, feeling sad and asking if her mom really married her off. Gu looks confused, saying she doesn't know what she's talking about. Just then, Shen shows up with a cheeky grin, and her face goes to shock as she realizes he's back from the trial. He teases her, dramatically saying he's a man of his word and reminding her that he promised to find her daughter as soon as he got out. She pulls her daughter closer and threatens him, demanding to know what he wants. If he dares to do anything improper, she warns, she'll move out. He looks confused by her reaction, rubbing his head and thinking he must be the first person to scare an NPC into moving out. He reassures her, saying he just wants her to give him the map for the intermediate dungeon. Gu looks suspicious and comments that she doesn't have such a thing, but then he closes his fist, catching her attention, as he sighs and says, "Fine." He adds that it seems he needs to show her something impressive, or she won't cooperate. He draws his fist back, his eyes glowing gold, ready to do something. They both close their eyes, waiting in fear for what will happen. After a moment, she opens her eyes, wondering why nothing has happened. To her surprise, Shen is holding a large, bright bluish gem, and they both stare at it in awe. He smiles and says, "Don't just stand there. This is to thank you for letting me take the hidden class trial before. Take it," as he hands her the gem. They both forget what just happened and focus solely on the gem, their eyes lighting up with excitement. As he smiles, the system notifies that both of them like him a bit more, showing a +50. Overjoyed by the gift, she starts to drool a little, love hearts appearing in her eyes. She grabs her cheeks and asks him if it's really for her. But just then, her daughter snatches the gem from her hands, catching Gu off guard. Shen looks dumbfounded, wishing only to get the location. As the girl walks away, her eyes glued to the gem, she admires its beauty and smiles with delight. Gu quickly follows, her expression firm as she demands her daughter return it. The girl responds defiantly, clutching the gem tightly and beaming. Gu's voice rises in frustration as she insists on getting it back. Meanwhile, her daughter nudges her arm, eyes sparkling with excitement, as she wonders if Shen's earlier comment about marriage means the gem is an engagement token. He closes his eyes and coughs, thinking that this little girl is really as mischievous as they say. It was just a joke, but she took it seriously. He replies that, of course, that's what it means, but her mother needs to give him the location of the intermediate map first. Just then, Gu agrees as he opens one eye. She looks sad but explains that according to the rules, the intermediate map can only be handed over after 20 days since the server opened. However, since he took her gem, she offers a secret. The system has given the village chief permission to hand out the map to players who like challenges. But just then, her daughter lifts her hand to grab his attention, excitedly saying she knows where the village chief's house is. Gu looks caught off guard, her face showing shock. The girl sits up and points to Shen, eager to lead him there right away if he wants. The scene shifts to the chief's house, where someone is lounging comfortably on a mat. They stretch out in the warm sunlight, letting out a contented sigh as they enjoy the peaceful surroundings. The soft rustle of leaves and distant sounds from the village create a relaxing atmosphere, making it a perfect spot to unwind. With a smile, they close their eyes, savoring the calm of the moment. But just then, she notices a shadow in the distance approaching her. Suddenly, the daughter lands excitedly on her lap, exclaiming that someone is here to see her. The impact causes a jolt of pain, and she winces, struggling to hear through her discomfort. As she opens one eye feeling hurt, she thinks that lying down might not be the best for her body. She then questions Linger about who is looking for her. Linger points to Shen, saying it's him. He sits down and gets straight to the point, stating that he needs the intermediate dungeon map to leave the beginner village. The chief just smiles and replies that a young man like him shouldn't rush. He needs to be level 20 to enter and should come back later. Shen thinks about his options and then slides a gem similar to the one before toward the chief, asking if this will help, all while wearing a confident smile. The gem slides in front of her, and she looks down at it with a smile. She questions if he's trying to bribe her for the information, reminding him that she is the village chief if he's forgotten. Then, putting on a tough expression, she takes the gem and places it between her breasts, stating that since she's an upright and honest person, she's doing him a favor by taking it for his own good. Shen, however, knows she's just trying to steal it from him. But just then, Linger smiles and reaches for the gem, declaring that since the village chief is so upright and honest, she's going to give it back. The chief starts to panic as Linger hands the gem back to Shen, who grabs it eagerly. She adds that he should take it back, while the chief realizes her plan to steal the gem has failed and can't believe she missed out on such a prize. Shen thinks that Linger isn't so bad after all for returning the gem. He turns to the chief and suggests that since it's for her own good, she should help him get the map. The chief points her fan at him, eyes closed, and responds, noting that he's only level 13. Though she can see he's leveling up quickly, she warns him that even the creatures in the intermediate dungeon are at least level 20. Going there now would be a death sentence. To be fair to the other players, she still can't give him the map, but Shen looks at her and questions whether there's a way he can prove he has the strength for the new area. She lays back down, smirking as she comments that if he wants it that badly, she agreed to help if he can prove his strength. She mentions that she has a task for him, and if he completes it, he'll get what he wants. Shen looks at her, curious, and asks what she needs done. She walks to the fence, gazing out at the mountains and the surrounding land. She explains that every year, the village gets attacked by a pack of wolves. Occasionally, some brave warriors and players come to help fight them off, but they can never fully solve the problem. She reveals that there's a leader behind the wolf pack, recalling what the leader looks like as she names him, the White Wolf King. In anger, she demands that he take down the White Wolf King and bring back its pelt, as the system notification pops up, announcing the White Wolf King side quest with rewards including the intermediate dungeon map, the Wolf Slayer title, White Wolf pants, and 10 silver coins. Except, he smiles as he accepts the task, standing up with a cheeky remark that she should get the map ready for him. With confidence in his eyes, he assures her he won't be long. Just as he turns to leave, he feels a hand grab his. It's Linger, smiling brightly, as she declares that she'd be going with him and can protect him. He looks confused and tells her this isn't a trip she can join, insisting that he's going hunting and urging her to return to her mother. Gu was adamant about leaving, her stubbornness shining through as she vowed to protect her village from the white beast. Shen, clearly frustrated, turned to the village elder, hoping he could persuade her to stay. Despite the mounting tension, the village elder remained calm, her eyes closed as Gu pleaded her case. Suddenly, A system window appeared, revealing a new condition for the quest. He must protect Gu. Shen's expression shifted as the realization hit him. He had been deceived. The village leader had merely sought to offload Gu onto him rather than handle the situation herself. She climbed onto his back, playfully saying that he was going to marry her. Shen rolled his eyes, calling her a monkey and telling her not to climb on him. When she pretended to cry, he felt irritation rise, knowing she was just faking it for attention. Despite his frustration, he couldn't stay mad for long. Finally, he sighed and said she could come along. Her face lit up with a joyful smile as she agreed, clearly pleased with the outcome. As night fell, they reached the forest, and Shen opened the quest window. Looking around, he told Gu that, based on the hints, this was the right place. She grabbed onto his jacket, her voice shaking as she said she didn't like it and felt scared. The darkness only made her fear worse, and Shen felt a bit uneasy too. Just then, a loud sound of battle erupted, catching their attention. They both turned toward the noise, and Shen thought there might be people nearby to ask for directions. However, Gu was still scared and didn't want to go anywhere near the sound. They cautiously approached, arriving just as the battle came to an end, witnessing the last beast being defeated. As the player pulled his weapon from the defeated beast, Shen waved and asked if they could give him directions to the wolf's lair. A team of 6 players turned to face him, clearly on guard. Among them was a level 7 assassin, a level 6 warrior, a level 5 archer, a level 5 mage, and their leader, a level 6 warrior. The leader questioned Shen, demanding to know why he wanted to know, stating that the area was already claimed by them and that he wasn't allowed to grind levels there. But Shen was confused about how the area was taken. His expression showed he was lost, trying to make sense of it all. Meanwhile, Gu clung to Shen's back, peeking out with wide eyes, feeling safe behind him but clearly anxious about what was happening. The leader adjusted his equipment to reveal his shoulder, where a tattoo glowed red. With a threatening smile, he remarked that Shen must not be aware of who the biggest guild was at the moment. The tattoo, shaped like a snake, gleamed ominously as he boasted with pride that it belonged to the Green Snake Gang. Shen, however, looked unimpressed and had no idea who that guild was. The leader put his equipment back on, brimming with confidence. He explained that the buffalo area ahead was also claimed by their gang. If Shen wanted to grind levels, he would have to pay a fee. Otherwise, he should head back to the beginner village and find something easier to hunt. But the leader noticed Gu and questioned whether she was an NPC rather than a player, wondering if she was part of a mission. Shen quickly covered Gu with his hand, asserting that it was none of the leader's business. Gu, feeling scared, clung tighter to him. Shen pointed out that their grinding methods weren't the best way to level up, a small smile creeping onto his face. He was confident in his own approach and wanted to reassure Gu, despite the tense situation. The archer looked at Shen like he was a fool, taunting him for knowing nothing about hunting. He warned Shen to be careful of the wolves in the area, given his level. The mage also watched Shen with a similar look, clearly thinking he was making a mistake by messing with them. But Gu could sense that something bad was coming. Fear crept into her heart as she grabbed onto Shen, wanting to feel safe. She then pointed in a direction, telling Shen that something was coming. He looked down at her, confused by her fear and wondering what had made her so scared. He then activated his senses, scanning the area to see if there was really something approaching. His focus sharpened as he tried to detect any signs of danger nearby. Just then, a dark shadow appeared, its glowing red eyes staring at the team of players, who were unaware of the danger behind them. The tension in the air grew as the threat moved closer. Shen could now feel the danger that Gu had sensed. He realized this was bad news for them, and his heart raced as he prepared for what might happen next. Not wanting to find out what was coming, Shen quickly grabbed Gu and dashed away from the group at great speed. He understood the immense threat approaching them, while the other players remained oblivious to the danger behind them. He landed on a tree branch, thinking it would give them a safe distance. From there, he looked around, trying to assess the situation and keep an eye on the group below. But a voice called out, mocking Shen. It told him to hurry and get lost, claiming he didn't belong there and was just a dreamer for trying to level up in their area. Shen could only think about how foolish these people were. He wondered how they could be so unaware of the massive killing intent that was approaching them. But it was too late for the other group, the beast had arrived. Its eyes glowed red, and a dark aura surrounded it as it loomed over the players, ready to strike. Meanwhile, the group continued to smile and mock Shen, completely unaware of the massive threat standing right above them. Drool from the beast splattered onto the assassin's head, catching her off guard. She blinked in surprise, feeling the wetness and suddenly realizing something was very wrong. But it was too late. The beast was already attacking. The assassin felt helpless as she looked up, her eyes widening in fear at the incoming strike. The beast lunged forward with terrifying speed, its massive jaw snapping shut around the assassin in one swift motion. She had no time to react. In an instant, it was over. She was defeated in a single blow. The other players stood frozen in shock, their earlier mockery fading away as they realized the danger they were in. Panic began to spread through the group, but it was already too late to escape. The looming threat of the beast overshadowed any thoughts of bravado they once had. The leader's scream echoed through the air as they saw their teammate fall. Panic gripped the group, their faces pale with fear as they scattered in every direction. In the shadows, the boss's glowing red eyes watched them intently, a predator ready to strike. The boss sprang into action, enveloping itself in darkness and disappearing into the shadows. It moved silently, a chilling presence lurking, ready to strike at any moment. Suddenly, it launched its assault, darting in and out of the shadows, disappearing and reappearing to strike. The group was helpless, trapped in a deadly game as the boss toyed with them. After toying with its prey long enough, the boss raised its claw, ready for the final blow. Blood filled the air as it effortlessly defeated the group. Shen watched from a distance, activating his skill to assess the boss's stats. The system revealed it was the White Wolf King at level 20, with weaknesses in its abdomen and eyes. However, he noted with frustration that the boss's skills were temporarily unavailable. He drew his weapon, ready for action, noting the boss's hidden tricks. The speed it had just shown far surpassed the displayed stat of 40. He knocked an arrow, strategizing how to test the boss's skills. Suddenly, Gu placed her hand in front of the arrow, halting him. He glared, insisting she move her hand, but she replied firmly that he couldn't attack just yet. Sensing their presence, the boss glanced back and realized it was at a disadvantage. It quickly decided that retreat was the best option. Shen could only curse as he watched the boss flee. Grabbing Gu, he jumped to the ground, insisting they had to catch up with it. Just then, Gu spoke up, urging him not to chase after the boss. She explained that the only reason the boss had emerged was that the other group had hunted too many wolves, attracting it. She continued, pointing out that Shen was too weak to face the boss right now, and provoking it would be a poor course of action. She looked up at him with confidence, stating they needed to prepare thoroughly before attempting to hunt the boss. Shen reflected on how NPCs offered hints based on their affinity for him and realized she was speaking the truth. But he questioned her, pointing out that if they let it go, how would they find it again? Gu wasn't worried. Instead, she reached into her dress and reassured him that she had something to help. She pulled out a map that resembled a child's drawing and explained that it was an auto pathfinder map, capable of locating the boss. He took the map, astonished by what he held. He raised an eyebrow, questioning why she hadn't mentioned it earlier. Gu simply smiled cheekily, making a peace sign with her hand, conveying that sticking with her would bring him more gains. Just then, the system announced that his skill called Evolution was ready to use again. He glanced down at his wristband, which was glowing with energy. He smiled, realizing this was good news. Gu had said he was too weak, and this could help him if he used the skill properly. As the energy glowed around him, Gu watched in awe, commenting on how beautiful it was and asking him what it was. He told her to just watch as he prepared to show off a bit. Looking down at his glowing wristband, he brought it to his chest and confidently called for the skill to activate using his bloodline again. But just then, a system window popped up, indicating an error. He looked confused as he read it, while Gu wondered what error meant. Another window appeared, stating that he had already evolved his bloodline and couldn't do it again, adding that it was a nice try. Shen's face flushed with embarrassment. His attempt to show off hadn't gone as planned. He shrugged, saying it was worth a try and that trying wasn't against the rules of the game. Frustrated that he couldn't use the skill on his bloodline, he muttered that he could only activate it for his phantom skill, which he hadn't even used yet. Gu looked puzzled, not understanding his words. He raised his hands, deciding it was time to see what the skill could do. Phantom skill, activate, he called out, closing his fists. A glow radiated from them as a large ball of energy shot into the air. Gu watched in amazement, captivated by the spectacle. The energy gathered and transformed into water, swirling together at the center. Suddenly, the core exploded, and a water figure resembling Shen emerged. The watery version of him fell to the ground as Shen smiled, while Gu looked on, impressed by the sight of another version of him. He glanced back at her, both he and his water doppelganger laughing at the unexpected turn of events. Turning his attention to the water phantom, he clicked his fingers, commanding it to use the skill 7-star arrow attack. He figured it was a perfect opportunity to test the phantom's abilities. The phantom received the command and pulled back an arrow, calm and focused as more arrows materialized around it. Just then, Shen raised his hand, ordering it to stop, wanting to verify if the phantom could indeed use skills. Pleased with the results, he placed his hands on his hips and exclaimed with joy that, since he had a hidden class, it was expected that the phantom could use skills as well. Closing his eyes in happiness, he reveled in the thought of all the skills he possessed. Suddenly, he realized that if the phantom could use all his skills, that opened up countless combinations for him. His mind raced with possibilities as he envisioned everything he and his phantom could achieve together. Excitement bubbled within him at the thought of their newfound potential. Shen looked at his phantom and snapped his fingers, commanding it to use the evolution skill. Just then, the phantom's armband began to glow gold as it lifted its hand into the air. Shen and Gu could only watch as the phantom activated the skill, the glow growing brighter and brighter. The light stopped gathering as the phantom pointed at Shen. In an instant, the massive golden beam shot straight toward him. The light enveloped Shen completely, and he gazed at his hands, wondering if it had really worked. Just then, the system announced that the phantom had evolved, stating that Shen could now summon two phantoms, each wielding 60% of his attack power and lasting 60 seconds. Shen clenched his fist and smiled with joy, struggling to believe it had actually worked. He even realized that the other phantoms he created could use the evolution skill as well. But just then, Gu looked up at him, confused, and questioned whether he was cheating. She remarked that it was the only explanation after witnessing what he had just done. Shen met her gaze and replied, insisting that he wasn't cheating at all. He continued, saying she shouldn't joke around, as the power he had was far greater than cheating. Then he asked her what she thought his chances of defeating the boss were now. She looked at him and shouted that his chances were now an impressive 20%. As he glanced at her, the phantom's skill duration ended, causing it to start fading away. He smiled, knowing he could improve that percentage. Looking down, he placed his hand on his chest and activated the skill again, the armband glowing golden once more. He commanded it to evolve his 7-star arrow skill. A system notification appeared, showcasing the newly improved skill. It was now called 7-star flaming arrows and could not be evolved further. Each arrow now had a flaming effect, dealing 1% true damage based on the target's maximum health. Each arrow applied a burning effect that lasted 1 to 7 seconds, dealing 50 damage per second. The skill had a cooldown of 40 seconds and a cost of 30 to use. Shen looked disappointed as he read the information, commenting that he had hoped it would shoot more arrows this time, but that wasn't the case. Gu chimed in, saying that the skill was already powerful as it was. She thought to cheer him up, winking as she looked up and lifted her finger, indicating that his chances of winning against the boss had just gone up to 34%. But it didn't matter, as the system interrupted with a notification stating that the phantom cooldown was complete. This caught both of their attention, and Shen remarked on how quickly that happened. He saw it was the perfect time to evolve the other phantom so it could split into two. He used the skill, and two phantoms appeared on the ground. He told them to use the evolution skill, but the system notified him that he couldn't do that yet because the skill was still on cooldown. Shen looked at the information, thinking about what to do next. He began to think, noting that the phantoms couldn't use the skills if the main body had already activated them and would have to wait for the cooldown to finish. As he pondered this, Gu watched him closely while Shen spoke aloud, reflecting on his thoughts. Just then, he realized something important, rubbing his chin in thought. He noted that if he didn't use the skill himself, there would be no cooldown for the phantoms. This meant the phantoms could potentially use the evolution skill, and once a summoned phantom split into two, the new phantom could also use the skill. He continued to think through this new strategy. He realized that this alone wouldn't be enough to defeat the boss and understood he needed something more to increase his chances of winning. As he walked away, he commented to Gu that he needed something to boost his win rate. She questioned where they were going next. The scene shifts underwater, where a large fish is hunting for its next meal. It springs into action, opening its mouth to seize its prey, but suddenly an arrow shoots straight through its head. The fish screams in pain, but it's all over, it's defeated. We now see Shin smiling, pleased that he hit the fish. The system announced that it wasn't a fish but an advanced crocodile, which Shen had just defeated and evolved. The notification stated that the meat restored to 100 health and 20 MP, increased his speed by 30%, and boosted his strength and agility by 10% for 30 seconds. As the defeated crocodile floated to the surface, Gu beamed with happiness, noting that they now had meat to eat. With a new strategy in mind, he wasted no time and activated the phantom skill, flicking his finger with his eyes closed as the phantoms materialized, ready for action. He commanded them to start hunting the crocodiles. Smiling and laughing, he told Gu that she would have her fill of meat very soon. An hour had passed, and Gu looked incredibly happy, burping loudly. She seemed quite satisfied with the meal she had just enjoyed and appeared to be feeling quite full now. She was very pleased with the meal, commenting that it was the first time she had tasted such delicious fish meat. She radiated happiness as the system notified them that Gu liked him a bit more, her affection rising by 30 points. Shen replied that the meat was evolved high-grade fish meat, so it was to be expected. Shen opened his inventory and saw he had 41 advanced carp meats, which restored 10 HP and 5 MP per second for 10 seconds, along with 17 advanced crocodile meats. As he read through the information, he commented that having just 3 phantoms was incredible, and with all the recoverable items, he believed he had enough to take on the boss now. He turned to Gu and questioned her about his chances. She looked up, closing one eye as she began to calculate his chances. After a moment, she commented that it was now around a 40% chance that he could win. After hearing that, Shin got up and dusted off his pants. With his eyes closed, he told Gu it was time to take down the boss and that they should head there now. Gu quickly got up and started to catch up to him, but little did Shen know, a few players were hiding in the shadows behind them. They began to follow Shen and Gu, likely after the boss themselves. Gu led Shen to the boss's location, commenting that they had arrived. Shen thanked her for showing him the way as they both stood in front of a massive dark cave in the mountain. Wasting no time, Shen activated his phantom skill, snapping his fingers. Two phantoms appeared, and he commanded them to use the death trap skill. As they began to activate the skill, he smiled, realizing that the phantoms lasted 60 seconds and that death trap would come off cooldown in 20 seconds. This meant each phantom could place down 2 traps, resulting in a total of 4 traps per summoning. He started clicking his fingers again, summoning the phantoms to do the same thing repeatedly. They created what he called the Web of Death. As Shen looked at his creation, the many death traps lay before him like a massive spider's web. Gu glanced at the elaborate setup and commented that Shen might have gone a bit overboard. She added that his win rate hadn't increased after setting up all the traps. Meanwhile, Shen was busy opening his inventory, focused on preparing for the battle ahead. He looked at her while eating the fish meat and commented that the boss was just really fast, so he needed to make sure it had nowhere to run. The system notified him that he had recovered 200 MP, adding it to his total. However, Gu, looking unimpressed with his battle plan, pointed out with a concerned expression that his win rate hadn't even reached 50% yet. She questioned how he expected to win with that. Shen smiled confidently, pointing to his head and stating that he would win with his mind, meaning his ability to think on his feet. He then told Gu to hide behind a tree, assuring her she would be safe there, as he had placed a few traps around for protection. He emphasized that she must not come out no matter what happened. She agreed and quickly ran to the tree. With his battle plan in place, he shouted into the massive cave, demanding the White Wolf King to come out and face him now. His words echoed in the cave, but suddenly a bright red eye glowed in the darkness as the boss emerged into the light. The White Wolf King arrived at the entrance, responding to Shen's call for battle, its gaze fixed on him with lethal intent, ready to strike. Shen looked up and realized the true size of the boss, feeling as small as a dog compared to a bear. Yet, he remained confident, smiling as he thought to himself that once the boss came out and moved to close, it would fall right into his massive trap. But then the boss gets a scent of something. It comes to a halt at the cave's entrance, letting out a frustrated growl. Recognizing that something is wrong, it decides that it is better to flee than risk a fight it cannot win. It slowly backs away into the cave's shadows. Shen was confused yet impressed as he noticed the boss escape into the cave, realizing its unexpected intellectual ability. But then Shen realized why he was there, and his frustration increased. He began provoking the boss to come out, while Gu observed from a distance. She blushed slightly and considered marrying Shen if he succeeded to defeat the boss with less than a 50% likelihood of success. She was so concentrated on the battle, however, that she failed to detect someone sneaking up behind her and reaching out to grab her. However, it was too late. The guy who had been following them captured Gu, and fear set in as she realized she was in danger. A system notice appeared, indicating that a trap had been activated. Chen looked down at the alert, confused, questioning how one of his traps had gone off. He began to consider where he had put his traps and discovered that the web he had laid at the boss's entrance had not activated. Then it hit him. He had prepared some traps to safeguard Gu. Panic grew as he turned back, resenting the person who had set off the trap. He noticed a bunch of players behind him, with one of them holding Gu. She cried in terror, pleading for them to let her go. The person holding her commented that she was difficult to cope with, while others on the ground struggled, trapped in Shen's traps. They requested assistance from their leader in escaping. But just then, Shen tried to catch the leader's attention as he recommended that he should let the child go. When Shen arrived, she got angry and stated that she was a child and that he should let her go before she told her husband to take care of him. But the guy holding her simply looked confused. He stared down at her, confused about how someone her age could have a husband. Chen panicked when he realized his joke about becoming Gu's partner had come back to bother him. He couldn't believe she was referring to him, but his fears came true as she screamed for Shen, demanding that he help her because he was her husband and deal with the horrible men. Shen's expression was confused and shocked as he questioned why she would say something like that in front of everyone. Suddenly, other members of the group began laughing, mocking him for having no chance with girls his age and saying he had to try with someone younger. Another even called him disgusting. Chen stared at them, understanding his joke had gotten him into trouble. Just then, the leader of the group passed Gu to another member with a serious look. He questioned Shen if he knew who owned the area. With a calm expression, Shen confirmed that it belonged to the Green Snake Gang. The leader then pressed him, asking how he dared to come into their territory to try and level up. With an angry expression, the commander frowned at Shen and stated that his guild brothers had been ambushed in the region the day before, insinuating that Shen was involved. He took a step closer, his serious look intensifying as he raised a finger, questioning if the ambush had anything to do with Shen. He responded that he had no involvement in what happened to the guild members and recommended that if the leader did not trust him, he should wait until they were resurrected in the game or phone them outside of the game to prove his honesty. The commander chuckled, stating it made sense that Shen couldn't defeat 4 of his brothers while alone. He demanded to know why Shen had entered their area. Shen realized he needed to remain cool, especially since they still had Gu. He answered that he was simply looking about the neighborhood and had no particular goal. But the member carrying Gu yelled that Shen was lying, arguing that he was there for a secret boss or a rare item. He stated he had no idea where Shen acquired his knowledge, but the creatures and goods in the region belonged to them. Shen gave him a weird look and began to sweat as he considered where these guys came from. He understood that even if he handed them the hidden boss, they wouldn't be able to beat it. But then Shen thought that feeding them the boss may help him lessen its health, allowing him to swoop in and take the bounty while also recovering Gu. With a stern attitude, he pointed to the cave and indicated that if they let Gu go, they may get the secret boss. But the leader ignored Shen, mocking and rejecting him as a joke if he believed he could bargain with them, and wondering whether Shen even knew who he was. Shen stroked the back of his head and asked for the leader's name. Just as a lady approached them, she tapped the leader's shoulder and introduced him, explaining that he was Yang Cheng's 3rd young master and the successor to Yang Chen's 2nd largest consortium, who ranked 27th in the game. Shen grinned, noting that his business owned 40% of the consortium's shares. He remembered how the CEO had always treated him with politeness, compared to this young master's approach. Shen then noted that he had heard of the firm and knew who Yang was, raising the issue of what Yang wanted from him. Yang requested that Shen hand up all of his belongings and money as punishment for being outspoken. Shen's patience was running out as he became increasingly annoyed with Yang's attitude. He maintained that he never wanted to escalate the situation, implying that he intended to kill him. As his mood hardened, he raised his hand, intending to snap his fingers, announcing that he had had enough of their pitiful performance and would deal with them. However, just as he was ready to utilize a talent, a loud roar exploded from the cave, sending shockwaves outside. The lady pointed to the cave and told Yang that there was a hidden boss within. Yang smiled when he heard the news. Shen was furious, thinking he had earlier told them about the hidden boss. Yang rallied his guild, claiming that they were an elite guild and that killing this boss would win them a place on the game's heavenly list. He raised his hand. Shen observed carefully, watching their next move. He then issued the command to attack the cave containing the hidden boss, leading the charge from the front, excited to win the spoils. The others followed closely behind, preparing for the fight. As he approached the cave, the member holding Gu tossed her back to Shen, saying that he should take his kid bride and that they would settle their problem later. Gu, still scared but pleased to be back with Shen, watched the gang approach the cave beside him. Shen became confused as to how that guild had grown to such a level. He watched them sprint for the cave, noting that, despite their high level, they had made no preparations for the concealed boss. They didn't even appear to evaluate their surroundings, which may have benefited them. Just then, a member approached the web trap Shen had built for the boss. Shen, with a sly smile, said that if they activated his traps, they couldn't blame him because they could have noticed the traps if they had approached carefully. As he predicted, the Green Snake Gang was ensnared in Shen's network of traps designed for the hidden boss. He observed the consequences of their lack of preparation. Yang roared in frustration, confused by the overwhelming amount of traps, as the rest of his guild fought to free themselves. Shen felt a mixture of joy and frustration as he realized how easily they had fallen for his carefully constructed strategy for the secret boss. Just as he returned his focus to the cave, a deep growl echoed from the darkness, signaling that the hidden boss had become aware of them. He laughs, saying he just needed the boss to stop moving so he could lock on, as the phantoms take aim and charge their skills. They unleash the 7-star flaming arrow, sending 14 arrows streaking toward the boss. Just as he looks up, he sees all the arrows hurtling toward him at incredible speed. It dawns on him what Shen meant by keeping him still. The boss reacts instantly, shoving Shen aside as he sees the arrows closing in fast. He activates his abilities and begins to disappear once more, angered at how easily Shen had cornered him, as the last arrows from the phantoms explode into the ground. As the dust settles, laughter echoes in the air, and the boss turns to see Shen, the source of the amusement. Anger wells up inside him at the sight. Their eyes lock, and Shen smirks, teasing the boss about whether he's enjoying the fun he set up for himself. It's clear that some arrows have struck him, revealing that he hadn't activated his skill quickly enough. Looking down at Shen, he understands he's being mocked, and fury ignites his resolve to hold nothing back. The system displays his HP, now down to 2,780. Shen stands up, sensing the killing intent radiating from the boss, but he ignores it and continues to mock him. With a grin, he informs the boss that his phantoms have already set traps all around them, smirking as he adds that it'll be tough for the boss to use his speed now. As he continues, he challenges the boss, questioning who will be the last one standing. With a mischievous grin, he starts to eat the high-grade crocodile meat he obtained earlier. The system announces twice that he has consumed the meat, granting him an increase of 200 to his health and 20 to his magic. His eyes glow bright red, an aura radiating from him as fury builds at the sight of Shen casually eating, as if the boss were nothing more than an easy level 5 monster. He realizes that his pride as the leader of the hidden bosses is being challenged. In response, he shifts into hunting mode. Shen wipes his mouth after eating, only to notice the boss start to disappear. He is caught off guard and wonders whether the boss is casting an invisibility spell in order to figure out what is going on. As he considers the nature of the skill, a shadow appears behind him, signaling that the boss has begun his hunt. But it's too late. Shen senses the boss's presence and turns to look back, struggling to comprehend how the boss appeared behind him. Realizing he can't block the impending attack, he braces himself for impact. The boss's attack connects, sending Shen flying and leaving him in pain. The system displays that he has lost 200 HP, then another 200 HP, while the boss appears pleased with his strike. As Shen struggles in agony, he suddenly remembers that this is the same skill the boss used earlier to defeat other players. But he doesn't have time to think, as he sees the boss charging at him again with great speed. The boss disappears once more, and Shen grits his teeth, realizing he needs to figure out the nature of the skill the boss is using to create a counterplay. Just then, he sees a large shadow appear behind him again and begins to understand that the boss might be using a skill called Blink or perhaps another skill like Teleport. It's the only explanation he can think of for how the boss is closing the distance without triggering the traps he said earlier. But it doesn't matter, as he's attacked again, losing 200 HP when the boss uses the skill once more, striking him while he's still midair from the first hit. Another 200 damage is dealt before the boss reappears in front of him, slamming him downward into the ground for yet another 200 damage. Shen crashes into the earth, creating a crater and a massive dust cloud, which adds an additional 200 damage to his already diminishing health. Shen sits up and rubs his head, gritting his teeth from the 4-hit combo the boss just unleashed on him. He grumbles about how the boss isn't giving him a moment to heal, coughing in pain as he tries to regain his focus. The system displays his HP, now down to 1670, but the boss doesn't care about Shen's thoughts, he only wants to defeat him. As Shen sits there rubbing his head, unaware, the boss reappears behind him, a smile spreading across his face. With a surge of excitement, he lunges forward, ready to attack again, thinking how this mere human dared to challenge him. But something unexpected happens as chains burst up from the ground, wrapping around the boss's arms. Confused, he looks around to see that he's standing in a glowing circle, his body bound by numerous chains holding him down. The system announces that the trap has been triggered. Shen bursts into laughter, commenting on how he figured out that the boss's skill is Teleport. He praises the skill but notes that being a close combat type makes it a disadvantage for the boss. He continues, pulling back an arrow and taking aim with a smile. He explains that if he places a trap under himself, the boss will always trigger it when teleporting in for an attack, since he needs to get in close. With a grin, he releases the arrow, declaring that it's finally his turn to have fun. The arrow strikes the boss, dealing 196 damage, and the boss has no choice but to absorb the blow. The boss glares back at Shen, furious about the attack. He knows the trap can only hold him for about 4 seconds, after which the chains will be weak enough for him to break free. As he counts down the seconds, he feels the pressure of the bindings but remains resolute, fully aware that his HP is now to 1,384. 4 seconds pass, and the boss smashes through the chains, dashing forward to attack Shen with his right claw. As Shen looks up at him, the boss's attack connects, dealing 800 damage and bringing Shen's HP down to 1670. The boss smiles triumphantly, thinking about how this human dared to believe he could hold the king of beasts down with such a weak skill. But Shen smiles at the boss, confidently stating that he knew the trap wouldn't hold for long. He just needed to figure out how long it would last. Now that he knows it's for seconds, he can execute his plan. Despite the pain he's in, he mocks the boss, asking what happened the first time he attacked him. He taunts the boss for not learning from that encounter, explaining how he let the boss strike him again to keep him still. With a snap of his fingers, he declares that he just needs 3 seconds to finish the job. Suddenly, two phantoms appear in the air above them, and one of them sets a trap, the system announcing that the trap has been set. Realizing the danger, the boss understands he needs to create some space between them. He quickly tosses Shen aside, knowing he must activate his skill immediately to escape the trap before it's too late. But just then, the system announces that the trap has been triggered. The boss's eyes widen in alarm as the chains and bindings spring to life, wrapping around him once more and sealing off his escape. He realizes too late that he has been caught in Shen's clever trap, and panic begins to set in as he struggles against the restraints. Shen realizes this is what he was waiting for. He commands the other phantoms to activate the 7-star flaming arrow. All 3 of them activate the skill simultaneously, their arrows glowing with fiery energy as they prepare to unleash the attack. aimed directly at the trapped boss. They fire all at once, transforming the 7-star flaming arrow attack into a 21-star flaming arrow attack. The glowing arrows streak toward the boss, and he realizes this might be it. He can't move for another 2 seconds. Panic surges as he braces for impact, knowing he's in serious trouble. A few moments before Shen's attack, the scene shifts to two players who have just arrived in the wolves area. They survey the landscape, one of them commenting that they can start gathering soon. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the area, visible from where they stand. One player blinks in shock and asks if the game has nukes in it, while the other responds that whoever caused that must be using a hack. The scene shifts back to the battle area, where Gu comes out of her hiding spot and approaches Shen, amazed that he was able to come up with such a clever plan. She stands next to him, complimenting him on how he has won, but it's clear that the boss isn't defeated yet. It still has 75 HP left and lies there, knocked out but not entirely out of the fight. But Shen ignores her and digs into more high-grade meat to heal from the battle. As he eats, he reflects on how 9 arrows missed the boss, realizing he could have dealt 3,000 damage if all the arrows had connected. He knows he needs to practice more with his phantoms, understanding that he got lucky this time against the boss. But Gu starts to talk again, and Shen finally decides to listen. She comments that he should finish off the boss already and complete the mission, pointing down at the defeated creature. Shen replies that there's no rush, as he still has something he needs to do. Gu, skeptical, doesn't believe him and thinks it's strange that he hasn't finished the hidden boss. She wonders what Shen is up to now. The scene shifts to the leader of the Green Snake Gang, who is still pretending to be defeated on the ground. He lays there, keeping his breathing steady, biding his time as he assesses the situation around him. He questions why everything has gone silent after the loud bang and wonders if Shen was defeated by that sound. Deciding it's best to play dead for a little longer, he stays still, waiting to see what happens next. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and like. It really helps me out.